Yeah, so welcome everybody. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. And you could see it a little bit in the description and I think the title. Did I even? Yeah, I did. I crashed the fuck out yesterday from exhaustion. My bad. But in the meantime, while I was crashing the fuck out, I made a lot of progress, which is great because the last stream I was just not really doing anything. I feel so much better. I feel more on, I feel more capable to take on this challenge. Yeah, let me show you what I have. So, I don't know if I did this on stream, but I finally managed to cut out thing I'm worried about the most. I haven't even started. Worst case scenario. Once I close these, it creates like more of this, which we'll see. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Hopefully I can actually show you guys more work than what I showed. I just really needed some time to figure my shit out, and then at the same time I couldn't stop working on this, and I wasn't really feeling like doing that on camera. Yeah, we're back. See how this comes out.
towards their new spiritual family. And while a meat-heavy diet can be a tool of association with the fitness,
I am watching this video about why it's called Why Crunchy Right is Obsessed with Eating Raw. And I find this interesting because to be 100% frank, I feel like I was going down this pipeline. Not fully, but just like from the I am a little crunchy, I am a little Well, I wouldn't call it crunchy when it's not a white person, but um, yeah. Point is, I got a lot of that stuff in me, and also I used to listen to Joe Rogan Experience. Oh man, that's hard to get out. Come on in. Well, hello. Oh yeah. No. I'll throw them in the washer right now. I just didn't want to walk in. Oh, that's really sweet. I didn't want to walk in and like while you were in your meeting, like start putting clothes on them. I know, right? Like once you cup it, it's like sick. Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, I'm streaming a little bit. I feel like in my last stream I just like did a shitty ass circle and then I like left without even saying bye because I was crashing out that day too. Um, and I just wanted to, like I wanted to show what I've actually because I feel like I promised something with that first video. I didn't do anything except reacting on videos and being all fucked up. And I did a lot yesterday. I want to show. Looks really good on like camera too. Um, but yeah, just trying to hopefully finish a lot of it today. So then I have like, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I might have to paint it tomorrow, and then just kind of like finish. Cause like on my end, there's not a lot to do. We'll see. We'll see how today goes. So I still have to go get a drug test for the like employment thing that I have to do. I'm a little anxious about that. No, I need to print out some forms, and I don't have a printer, so I'm gonna have to go. Go ahead. I can. I don't. The. I don't need to paint in color or print in color, but yeah, me neither. Yeah. Yeah. So just got a lot of little things. I'll work on this for a little bit. Thank you. Appreciate that. See you. Godspeed. Any Juan. Or Huerhui. Um. So my brain went blank. Ooh. Somehow I still thought of Coca-Cola. Damn. Ah. You know, it's a complicated relationship between a Mexican and Coca-Cola. And by that I mean addiction. But anyways, enough of that. Um, let's let's get to it. I'm gonna keep playing this video and working on this bad boy. Um, hopefully, hopefully we could finish today. I wanted to make like 4 of these. I might be able to make one more, but I think I got the process faster now, but we'll see. I also don't know how much more cardboard I'll have left. Kind of underestimated how much cardboard I needed, particularly like the size of the cardboard. This happens too when you make clothes, you don't really realize how much fabric, like for example, like an arm or something like that, because of how long it is. It's not so much, or when you need to like do the whole back of a suit or something like that or a shirt. It's just like it takes so much space just from its like length sometimes that you can't really find you have the amount of fabric but not in one continuous thing. And with this it's important to have one continuous thing because like a lot of the structure and integrity relies on the cardboard being like one piece. So yeah. This was fun though in the chaoticness. I wish I had more time. My dumbass went crazy with this, but yeah, we'll see. Anyways, I'm gonna play the video. I'm gonna get some water. I'm gonna play some music while I get water. take one more, honestly. I'm kind of seeking the head for that, but I think I can do it. Hurry up and don't crash out again. But let me not eat too much before I finish.
This community, it can also now serve as a tool of association with reactionary communities too. Reactionary diets aim to change persons' eating and cooking habits, ingredients, and also the role that food plays in their life. Influencers encourage their followers to eat food on a different schedule from their family, cook only for themselves, source separate ingredients, and prepare them in a way reflective of their online community and detached from the habits of real people in their lives. In more marginal cases, like that of a raw carnivore diet, the separation comes to the point where the food prepared by the man for themselves is outright inedible or even dangerous to other family members if they happen to have any. And the keto man is not only prone to reactionary propaganda beyond diet, he also is a great neoliberal agent, a shiny cog in the capitalist economy. The diet of meat is also a status symbol. Lent is for celibate monks and filthy peasants. True kings eat meat. In modern times, the dietary border between rich and poor is not as drastic, as most of the Western families on stable income can afford meat if they want to. But can they afford eating a whole, grass-fed, free-range, farm-raised steak every dinner? That is the question. Gustavo Pierre highlights the preparation and mental load required to become a true raw beef consumer in his article for right-wing publication Counter. Not all raw beef is good beef. The industrial enemies of raw foods are looking to make an example out of you. As Raw Egg Nationalist says, if you're going to eat raw beef, it must be the best quality and totally fresh. The steak can only be filet. Do what I did. Drive into the country, find a farmer, watch them cut the filet in front of you, and eat it no less than an hour or two later. Do not inform anyone of your plans. Dispose of any remains in the woods. Clear your internet history after you read this.
Run.
Well done, Gustavo. You are a true radical. Is there anything more revolutionary than going to the farm shop? Is solution to male loneliness doing groceries? While many carnivore influencers heroically proclaim that a carnivore diet is not that expensive, anyone who is not an online celebrity knows that meat, fish, and dairy fat are among the priciest of ingredients. Raw milk, for example, is illegal for sale in most of US and all of Canada, which means that you have to spend time finding someone who will sell it to you, prove your identity, drive to undisclosed location in rural area, and agree to a contract of repeating purchases to get it. Raw milk is illegal, but it is also expensive and hard to find. A carnivore diet is not just a sign of one's theoretical worries about their health, it is also a status symbol, a proof that your regular suburban Joe is no worse than Joe Rogan, the famous internet guy. The meat-rich diet of a red pill man is a necessary component of his financial success. So in The Rise of Keto Man, Wilson writes, the economic independence necessary for keto man to be able to afford meat in such large quantities becomes analogous to gaining personal freedom. To be on such an expensive diet like keto would appear reserved for the upper working class or middle class citizens. Yet it is often the working class man who finds himself drawn to keto. As meat is targeted towards and consumed by wealthy markets, it becomes a part of a refined sense of taste and from here offers the consumer symbolic capital. Keto man is in charge of his life and of his health, or at least he is trying to pretend that he is. If weakness and disease are merely a result of our poor dietary choices, that means that disease and disability are a personal failure of a weak man, who is not in the line with the healthy, stinky, and rich keto man. In marginal cases, obsessive, repetitive communion with animal flesh is simultaneously a body cleanse through ketosis and a prayer for good health. Animal body parts are not just food, they become ritualistic medical treatments, where each animal organ is supposed to treat something in the consumer's body, spirit, or life. Organ-derived supplements and animal-based cosmetic products aim to rejuvenate and heal people from the inside and outside, make them young, healthy, and happy. Targeted marketing for the reactionary audiences, of course, applies. And if the person becomes driven to a particular diet by their ideological choice, the diet becomes their source of connection with their new culture and their new online family. This isolationism also explains how, once found on the absolute reactionary fringes, carnivore and raw animal diets got picked by right-wing influencers and eventually radicalized many normies towards more conservative politics that are now mainstream. RFK Jr. is a perfect expression of this dietary switch. Covered in spray tan, his skin carefully stitched to his skull by a plastic surgeon, and his body altered by pharmacological treatment. RFK is a proponent of a carnivore diet, raw milk, and vitamin A boosters as a treatment for measles. He is a crunchy liberal turned reactionary who never had any trust in the medical system or scientific research unless it was used as a tool of transhumanist rejuvenation for his aging body. He walks the same path as many crunchy moms and health-conscious men. A mix of conspiratorial beliefs, fear, distrust, misunderstanding, self-made experts, alternative medicine, and in-group ideological influence shapes their path. In the end, reactionary diets show the pattern that is often ignored by nutritional advice, that what we eat isn't a reflection of most recent dietary advice, but rather it is a reflection of our identity. Be it a person's mom's recipe book or a dietary system proposed by their favorite online dating coach, no one is actually interested in the institutional health advice. Reactionary diets are a result of reinforcement through online content. Crunchy wellness, anti-vax, homesteading, red pill, black pill, manosphere podcasts, conservative commentary, all inevitably link a person to the extreme dieting advice. And as with any ideological funnel, certainly not every person will turn to eating raw animal organs after listening to Joe Rogan Experience. Only a selected few become fully radicalized. The road from one action to another certainly exists, and some do end up in a testicle guy situation where his reactionary beliefs now lead him to a pitiful existence of a guy who makes money by eating raw testicles for shock value. Hey, it's Editing Anna, and I'd like to apologize because it is actually not a testicle guy, it is a testicle king, otherwise known as Octavius Ra, which is an even better name. Anyway, I apologize to his royalty. I'm just a little peasant. I'm so sorry. Bye-bye. There is material analysis to this. Testicle Guy is a financial slave to a reactionary content machine that shovels bull genitals into his mouth for the glory of content. Liver King came out with the whole backstory of how he pumped his body full of hormones and raw meat at the expense of his health just for cash and online influence. This man have muscles and seem to be doing okay financially, but they are slaves to the system of reactionary content that controls their lives and their diets. What they eat is not decided by them, but by the wishes of their audiences of dissatisfied and politically charged men. And to make matters worse, dietary issues also get dismissed by the more progressive camps in real life as well as online. Currently, at least in the trenches of online content, discussion of nutrition and health advice in more progressive spaces does not provide sufficient alternative against the reactionary obsession with wellness. Eventually, teenage incels stop being teenage incels. These men grow up and they try to start their own little nuclear family, and someone needs to explain to them why their balls and their wives are full of microplastics. And if they go towards leftist spaces, their worries can be dismissed for being conspiratorial, pro-natalist, or anti-ecological, only reinforcing person's slide into a reactionary political scene. Often risks associated with industrial food production are dismissed by mainstream liberal sources as intrinsically reactionary. Well, they are not. Ironically, reactionary politics, conspiracies, and individualist wellness culture propose no tools to actually address the causes of environmental or dietary exposure to plastics or other chemical contaminants used in food industry. Modern reactionary diets may provide a temporary ideological relief to the needs of their audiences through questionable nutritional advice. But in the end, individual choice to eat nothing but beef and salt and exclude seed oils has no effect on political lobbying, unregulated pollution, occupational risks, inaccessible cost of healthy foods, or any other problem that leads to poor health to begin with. Constant communion with reactionary ideology through barely edible diets is not required to be healthy, and it does not address the cause of concerns reactionary influencers raise in the first place. However, till the distrust between modern wellness and modern science remains in place, till there are no rational, material explanations that link poor health to commercial production, climate change, and capital incentive, the wild ride of radical diets will continue.
This thing kind of sucks.
Swinging between radical extremes of alternative medicine and online influencer advice, people will continue to give their children unnecessary diarrhea and commit war crimes against their own taste buds. And the best you can do is perhaps to choose to cook your own meals, independent of the swings of the online reactionary culture. Thank you for watching. This video is brought to you by Asina and all of my well-fed patrons. If you would like to support my work financially, joining my Patreon is the best way to do so. I am aiming to move to a larger filming space, so if you're able to provide me some financial support, that will be absolutely welcomed. Or you can just subscribe to this channel. It is absolutely free for now, and I will absolutely love if you do so. And we can also see each other more often. What not to like? So thank you, and see you on the next one.
Yesterday, I started with covering the whole thing with like regular white glue, and it made everything wet. It was not drying fast enough. And yeah, that was a dumb thing to do. Right now that I'm using the hot glue gun, I'm like, holy shit, this is the way to go. The funny thing is, I've worked in like warehouses before and taken boxes apart that are like put together for like structure and like inside a, I don't know, like a furniture thing or something. Whenever they need like a strong adhesive that isn't like tape, they usually use hot glue. And I know this, and for some reason I didn't think to start there. But anyways, yeah. Whew. Waiting for the hot glue gun to get a little hotter because it's just kind of not really working as good. I think I started a little too early. Hopefully the bond is strong enough. I'm gonna reinforce it, but yeah. And the idea is that I'm gonna use paper to cover all the like, basically on all the corners. So it's like smoothish. So it doesn't look like it was a bunch of cardboard put together. And then I'm going to paint it all. And that's where the white glue is going to come in. Clutch. But yeah. You know, yesterday I was watching this like Nintendo 64 facts thing. To fall asleep to. Damn. All right, well, I have to go to my history. Where'd it go? I'm gonna do that over here because I don't trust my history. I'm gonna be honest, I'm very non-discriminatory when I watch YouTube because it's trash. It's trash TV. That's what it is. I think this is the one I was watching, and I think I watched 3 of them because yeah, I think this is the one I was watching.
People realize there's more to me. I don't like being thought of as the Metal Gear guy. There's a lot more I can do. Over his near 40-year career, there have been lots of self-confessed weird games Kojima couldn't make, like Silent Hills, an online zombie project, and what he called the raw game, the kind of concept no one's ever played before. But creative perfectionism, death threats from fans, and a myriad of other hindrances kept him tethered to Metal Gear for decades, and when he became vice president of Konami Computer Entertainment Japan, he gained an executive responsibility to focus on games that would appeal to a broad audience and make bank. Play it safe. Did You Know Gaming dug through hundreds of old magazine interviews in Japanese, Chinese, English, Russian, all to learn more about Kojima's ideas that never became reality. We even scoured some digital information, even if it is filtered by the Patriots. It quickly became clear that Kojima's aims got weirder over time, so we're going to cover things in chronological order, starting at the, start. Now let's go back, to a time even before Metal Gear, to 1986. That's when 22-year-old Kojima began his career at Konami, working as designer on his first game, Penguin Adventure for the MSX home computer. It's all about delivering a package across desolate landscapes, so I guess you could call it the first Strand-type game. After that, he wanted to make another MSX title called Lost World, spelled like a mix between world and war. In a 2007 issue of Famitsu Weekly we had translated, Kojima said, "The first thing I made was an action game, Lost World. I wrote an incredibly thick proposal that got a lot of attention at the time. They couldn't believe the new guy wrote such a big planning document. It was like an homage to Super Mario, a vertical, horizontal, diagonal scrolling action game. I put in bonus stages and stuff like that, but the MSX didn't have anywhere near enough capacity. I even made opening, middle, and ending cutscenes, but even just those took up so much space. I put a lot of thought into it. I'd never made a game before, so I went overboard. But then I was called in by my department head who said, I don't know when it'll get finished, so I'm canceling it. Those cutscenes were never made public, but we do know a little about the story thanks to more Japanese magazines. The player character would have been a girl named Jamie, who's honeymooning with her new husband Frederick aboard the Titanic, but instead of an iceberg, the Titanic crashes into a mysterious floating continent. Then a villain wrapped in smoke called Mr. Cloudman kidnaps her husband, and Jamie's gotta run off to save him. It's worth pointing out that Sons of Liberty later starred a guy named Jack and his girlfriend Rose as another hat tip to the Titanic. Kojima says he was working so hard on Lost World that he didn't get much sleep, but despite that, it was a lot more fun than future projects. When it got cancelled, basically for being too ambitious, Konami tasked him with making a war game instead. Kojima's Titanic-themed Mario homage getting canned turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because that war game ultimately became the first Metal Gear. Or at least it was a blessing for fans, though maybe not for Hideo himself. More on that coming up. A year later in 1988, Kojima released Snatcher, a self-described cyberpunk adventure. The story's set in 2042 East Asia, as a detective investigates artificial life forms that are going around killing people and taking their place. Soon after, Kojima found out Konami was making a Metal Gear sequel without him called Snake's Revenge, so he decided to develop his own sequel, Metal Gear 2: Solid Snake. If you haven't played it before, it's worth checking out. It sets up a lot of the story in later entries, and so much of the Solid titles are essentially 3D reenactments of what happened right here in Zanzibar. The next Kojima-directed title was Police Knots in '94, a sci-fi graphic adventure following space cop Jonathan Ingram as he investigates the murders of his ex-wife and her husband in 2040's old Los Angeles. Kojima also helped write an RPG remake of Snatcher and served as producer on the high school simulator Tokomeki Memorial series, but didn't return to the director's chair till the dawn of the 3D era, when he began work on Snake's third mission, Metal Gear Solid. In addition to characters from past entries like Gray Fox and Colonel Campbell, MGS also reused elements from Police Knots, like the Tokugawa Corporation and Meryl Silverberg, who's a soldier now instead of a cop. Don't know if you noticed this far, but Kojima likes to reference his older works in newer ones, even if they're not necessarily set in the same canon universe. Solid launched in '98 to critical and commercial success, with review scores in the 90s and over 6 million copies sold. Fans expected a sequel, but Kojima wasn't interested. I was completely exhausted, he said. After the first Metal Gear Solid, even after it was done, I wasn't recovering at all, and ended up being passed from one hospital to the next. He wanted to do something different for creativity's sake, but besides his directorial duties, he was also vice president of Konami Computer Entertainment Japan, which meant he had to temper his creative aspirations with more practical business considerations. I have so many weird ideas, but I have to make sure my ideas will sell too. If I wasn't a manager of the company, I would probably be creating all these weird games, but as a manager, I can't allow it. I was planning to create a completely new game, but I couldn't escape my fate. I have to direct the sequel. So he buckled down and got to work on Metal Gear Solid 2. But mid-development, he was still daydreaming about other game ideas, like something with less action and more detective work. He said, "I'd love to make a mystery game. I'd like to do an orientation kind of game where in the game they tell you, go to Heathrow Airport by 3 p.m. You go there and you see a number on the wall and then you follow that." One of the more weird ideas came a little later, when he told a UK magazine, "I have an idea for something that I call a raw game, a fresh game. If you play with it very carefully, it will continue for 10 or 20 years. But if you're not careful, once you reach game over, it ends. You can never play it again. It's dead. There is no continue." 5 years later, the same publication asked Kojima if he still wanted to make a disc that self-destructs when the player dies. "Yes, someday," he told them. "I included some similar elements in MGS3. You know, I think the whole concept of continues in games is totally outdated and unnecessary on home consoles. It all came from arcade games, where you throw in a coin when the game ends. I don't want to imprint children with the idea of virtual worlds where you can just play and die with infinite lives. Even if it is a virtual world, I want people to value their own lives. In that sense, a raw game would be perfect." Even later in 2008, he explained it was just one of several game ideas he was juggling in his head, more of which you'll hear about soon. He said maybe someday he could combine a few of them together to produce an actual playable title. Now more than 2 decades after he first dreamt it up, Kojima still hasn't put his raw game concept into action. It's worth noting though that a Russian studio tried to bring the same basic concept to life in 2015 with a game called One Life. The trailer went viral, racking up well over 1 million views.
There is no room for a single mistake. You have only one life. Take justice into your own hands.
Son of a I'm gonna friggin' kill you, you hear me?
If you die, you'll leave this game forever.
The gaming press drew a lot of comparisons between One Life and Kojima's idea. The Russian project made it to Steam Greenlight and sold pre-orders for $10. But not long after, the devs disappeared and the game was never finished. Some accused One Life of being a scam. Whether or not that's the case, a game with no continues is a pretty tough sell, especially to a broad audience. That kind of game might never be realized by any studio. Back to Kojima though. During his 3 years directing Sons of Liberty, he was also producer on Zone of the Enders, a mech hack and slash focused on 22nd century space colonists rising up against an exploitative Earth government. He also supervised console ports of Konami's arcade rhythm series Beatmania, another Tokimeki Memorial, and Metal Gear Ghost Babel, a story-heavy Game Boy Color spin-off set between Metal Gear 2 and Metal Gear Solid. After a difficult development, Sons of Liberty launched in 2001 to even more critical and commercial success than its predecessor. But it took its toll on Kojima. As soon as it was done, he told the press, "It was indeed the toughest time in my life in the video game industry. I've been sick physically since spring 2001. The MGS series is no longer mine. If people want a sequel, there will be a sequel. However, it is very unlikely that I would create a game plan, script, and direct it as I did with MGS 1 and 2. Just like the theme of MGS 2, it is necessary to pass it on to the next generation with the development team. So now there are many things I would like to do, like create a form of entertainment involving robots, online elements, and digital elements." End quote. You'll notice he said he wanted to create a form of entertainment, not necessarily a game. But all those robots, online, and digital elements would have to wait. Kojima said now wasn't the right time because of what was happening in the real world, possibly referring to the culture of fear and censorship in the wake of 9/11, which had already necessitated last-minute changes to Sons of Liberty's plot. All that became moot though when Kojima ended up getting sucked back into directing another sequel. "I'm kind of embarrassed that I said MGS 2 would be my last one," he lamented. "I mean, my feelings haven't changed. I really thought back then that I wouldn't do another. And here I am now once again saying this will be my final game. I really want to move on. I asked my staff, who wants to direct MGS3? I waited for a while and no one volunteered. They were too afraid of the pressure. Then I started coming up with the jungle and survival concepts, and eventually it got to the point where we were changing the game so much that I realized I needed to direct. It would be too risky otherwise. But he was still bursting with new ideas, like a game that changed based on the player's real-life movement and speed. He told Play Magazine, "Handheld systems are a great invention, but the games that you can play on them are basically the same as those on home systems. I thought this was unfortunate. There has to be a better way to exploit a portable system. Being able to carry it around means that your environment can change as you move around. I wanted this changing environment to be reflected in a game. Let's say you're in a car and you're going 50 kilometers an hour, and then maybe 60 kilometers an hour. I wanted the speed of the car to be implemented in the game. With game creation, you're basically making something out of nothing. It's just digital data. Since we have total control of everything that's in the game, we set the rails, and the players follow these rails. That idea didn't come to fruition, but it did lead to Kojima designing and producing a different portable game influenced by the player's surroundings. Boktai, The Sun Is in Your Hand released on Game Boy Advance between MGS2 and 3, with a very unusual conceit. Every cartridge could detect sunlight that could help vampire hunter Django vaporize the undead. Boktai also had a real-time day-night cycle, with chirping birds in the mornings and an orange glow at dusk. And naturally, vampires have an advantage in the dark of night. Talking about how the speed game idea turned into Boktai, Kojima said, "I'm a fan of vampire films. You know, I always wanted to drag the vampires out and burn them under the sun. So this idea and the previous idea of the changing environment merged together." Kojima produced a Boktai sequel 1 year later, which featured Solid Snake as an amnesiac merchant who can't remember his own identity. He was also producer on another Zone of the Enders and the Metal Gear Solid remake Twin Snakes. But none of these were a Hideo Kojima game. That's what he calls the ones he wrote, designed, and directed himself. The games he pours himself into completely. Despite his inclinations, the next one of those games was Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. After it released in 2004, Kojima was really done directing Metal Gear. For real this time. He'd step back, do some writing and produce, but he'd hand off the director's chair to Shuyo Murata, the guy who co-wrote Snake Eater and directed Zone of Enders 2. But when mega fans got wind of it, some sent death threats, leading to Kojima's team urging him to lead once more. The staff heard about this and got very nervous. Kojima told Computer and Video Games magazine, "We talk today as if it was a joke, but at the time it was not a joke at all. It was serious." In a later trailer, the director's chair is taken by Murata. For a split second right before, you can see the name Alan Smithy on the chair. First used in the 1969 film Death of a Gunfighter, Alan Smithy's a fake name used by directors who want to disown their creations. It's a reference most fans wouldn't catch, but it was clearly a strong statement by Kojima. By the end of the MGS4 trailer, it's revealed as a fake-out. Murata's not going to be the director after all. It's Kojima. Just one last time, he said, then he'll be free of Metal Gear. While Guns of the Patriots was in development, Kojima oversaw some smaller Metal Gears as producer, like Metal Gear Acid 1 and 2, PSP turn-based spin-offs written in part by Murata and set near the end of the series timeline. Another was Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops, taking place after Snake Eater, as well as Metal Gear Solid Mobile, set between Solid 1 and 2. Plus a couple more Boktai games with Snake returning as the amnesiac merchant, and 2 Japan-exclusive stock trading simulators for Nintendo DS. As usual, these were really more Konami and Kojima Productions games than Kojima's, but they're worth mentioning since he served as producer. So what kind of games did he want to be making? There were a few ideas he shared publicly, including a weird one about zombies.
Zombie? What does that mean?
Beats me.
You mean you've never heard of zombies?
Nope.
Never.
You guys don't know anything.
Kojima's always wanted to make a zombie game, but one very different to something like Resident Evil. It's well known that Kojima's a movie buff, and would watch at least a film a day as a kid. What's not as well known is he's an especially big fan of Dawn of the Dead, and used to shoot amateur zombie movies with his childhood friends. They'd sell tickets at 50 cents per view, thinking they could use the profits to buy lots more movies for inspiration's sake. Sadly though, they didn't end up making enough to buy even one movie. Kojima says Metal Gear was deeply influenced by Dawn of the Dead, and that any gameplay involving air ducts and elevators were lifted straight from it. Early in the PS3 era, Hideo told Edge magazine he liked Capcom's Dead Rising, and considered making at least one zombie game himself. The zombie idea I have is a bit different, he explained, but I'm less interested in the idea of the living dead than the fact that you can turn people just by biting them. That would be a great game system. I know that such a game has already been released, but I'd like to offer a truly online version. Imagine a large town where half the inhabitants are zombies. Users would subscribe, get inside the town, and get bitten. At that stage, they become undead and can't control their character. All they can do is modify the camera angles. They'd see their character attacking humans and have to pay just to watch. The only way they could end it is by opening another account, hunting themselves down, and killing themselves. Of course, the problem is that your second character can get bitten as well. Edge scoffed as politely as they could at the proposed business model. Kojima continued, "If you can't get yourself killed, then you can call a friend for help. Please kill my zombie, it's roaming at that address. But to be honest, there are just too many zombie games right now. Should I decide that the timing's right, then I'll take some time to prepare one. Very seriously." On his blog, he clarified that a server would end successfully when every zombie in a city was killed, or end in failure when zombies outnumbered humans. The online gaming fee will continue to tally while the zombie wanders the virtual streets, he said. If the player isn't happy with this, he can create a new zombie hunter. He can hunt down his former, now zombified character. However, if zombies bite the new character, then he zombifies too. The number of zombies associated with the player's payment account increases, and the fees continue to tally for the second character. This is a real zombie simulation. I want to make that game someday. He told Resident Evil creator Shinji Mikami about his idea repeatedly and encouraged him to bring the concept to life, but Mikami didn't seem up for it.
バイオハザードっていうのずっといろんなところに行ってるんですけど、一向にやってくれないんで。そうでしたっけ？昔僕隊の時に言いました。ドブレイクじゃなくて、ゾンビというのを。皆さんこれいかがでしょうか？それも今初めて聞きましたね。何回も聞きましたよこれ。
Did you know Gaming recently touched on this in a cancelled Metal Gear Games video? But it's worth repeating that Kojima said if Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance was going to have a sequel, he'd want it to star Frank Jaeger versus zombies. He pitched this idea to Revengeance's developers at Platinum Games and volunteered to write the story himself, but Platinum wasn't interested in his zombie ideas either. There's also been rumors coming from within Konami that Kojima originally planned for Metal Gear Survive to come out as DLC for the Phantom Pain. Survive was basically a zombie apocalypse game after all. Kojima's denied those rumors, but whether they're true or not, if he actually was planning zombie DLC for Phantom...
Alright. We've closed her up. It's looking pretty good. Now, I gotta get to the part I was fearing the most, which is the filling in these areas because they're curves. I am worried about how that's gonna go. Yeah. Part of me wants to put those first and then put the second circle on top. Maybe putting the inside ones and then putting the circle and then finally putting the outside ones. The speed of this becomes a problem too because interesting. Okay. I just got a really good idea for the chain hanging thing because I was worried about that. But I think I just got a really good idea for it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm worried about it, but we just have to keep going. I'm gonna start trying to cut those little parts right there, and we'll see where that goes.
Pain, it surely would have been different from how Survive turned out. Maybe more like his online zombie concept from a decade earlier. In a 2006 episode of Kojima's podcast Hide-Chan Radio, he was joined by Goichi Suda, the director and producer behind cult classics like Lollipop Chainsaw, Killer 7, and No More Heroes. They talked about making a text-based game together, a concept that's not so much revolutionary as it harkens back to the days before dedicated graphics even existed. Presumably, the two legendary directors would have sprinkled in modernizations and clever twists, but despite their enthusiasm, few details were delved into. Edge magazine later followed up, asking Kojima if he was still considering it. "I'd really like to," he told them, "but I know it wouldn't sell. You just can't do that today." Besides just specific game ideas, Kojima's also captivated by platforms themselves, like what's only possible on one or the other. Psycho Mantis is probably the most famous example, reading your PS1 memory card and vibrating your DualShock in a way that just couldn't be done as easily on Nintendo and Sega's consoles. More recently, he announced he was partnering with Xbox to make a cloud-based project, saying there's a game he's always wanted to make, a completely new concept that no one's ever experienced or seen before, only possible with the power of the cloud. Kojima's been mostly a PlayStation man throughout his career, but during MGS4's development, he wanted to expand and explore the capabilities of other platforms, saying he was regularly studying PC development to take advantage of its unique capabilities. But what he was really interested in was Nintendo Wii. The first time Kojima saw it, he said, "You've done it," was my reaction. This was totally unexpected. The Famicom defined the modern controller. It made us control games using the A and B buttons, holding the controller with both hands and facing the TV monitor. We've been doing this for 20 years and this premise will now be changed significantly. This is exactly what I've been looking for. Over the next year, he'd repeatedly express a strong desire for a tailor-made Wii game. For MGS4, we have already started the project for the PS3 platform, he told Game Informer, so we would like to concentrate specifically on what we could do just for the PS3. Another example is Wii. I'll try to create a title specifically taking advantage of the Wii's hardware. Later, talking to GamePro, he promised, "Yes, I will do it. I'm saying this every day. But first I have to face this giant that's called Metal Gear Solid 4. So until I'm finished with that, I can't do anything." Nintendo fans constantly psyched themselves up, adamant that Kojima could unveil his Wii game at any moment. It would have been interesting what unique ideas he might cook up, but it seems like he never found the time. Though he did, quote, practically beg his friend Sakurai to put Solid Snake into Smash Bros., and Kojima personally designed the Shadow Moses level for Brawl. As a result, Geckos actually debuted on Wii before their mainline appearance in MGS4. But ultimately it was Microsoft who won him over, not Nintendo, with Kojima announcing Metal Gear Solid Rising at an Xbox event. Rising got cancelled. You can hear all the sordid details in Did You Know Gaming's recent cancelled Metal Gear games video if you haven't already. Looking back though, Rising actually could have played great with Wii Motion Plus. It just wouldn't have been much of a looker. Anyway, after Guns of the Patriots, Kojima admitted Snake was supposed to die, but everyone on the staff really wanted to keep him alive, so I caved a little. Actually, I wanted to end it at every step along the way. I have a lot of other things that I want to do. By now, though, you know how it goes. He just couldn't quit her. And the next Hideo Kojima game was Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, this time seemingly more due to his creative perfectionism than any outside forces. Talking to Dengeki PlayStation Magazine, he said, "At first, I was just going to create the overall guidelines and concepts for the project, and leave it in the hands of my excellent staff. I was going to have a hand in the project as a producer and make titles other than MGS, but I set the game in the South American country of Costa Rica and created a story with themes about nuclear deterrence and the Cold War. It looked like it might be very confusing to young people because of generational differences, so in the end I finally said, I'll do it. He'd later go on to say his younger staff had trouble understanding the 1970s Costa Rican setting as well, another reason he wanted to do it himself. Peace Walker was a pretty quick turnaround by Kojima standards, less than 2 years, so he didn't do much on the side. Although he did grab an executive producer credit on Metal Gear Solid Touch, a mobile game that's basically a super simplified retelling of MGS4, both in terms of story and gameplay. During this time, fans and press alike kept asking for remakes of Snatcher and Policenauts. In fact, they'd been asking for years. Kojima consistently said he was up for it, but only if another studio handled development, while he oversaw as producer. He just didn't have time to direct remakes himself, and really no desire to look backwards, only forwards. For Metal Gear Solid 5, Kojima did his usual song and dance, said maybe he'd only make quote-unquote one stage. But of course the game, or rather games, both got the Hideo Kojima game treatment, and were the last Metal Gears to do so. During their production, Kojima had a few other irons in the fire, like a critical advisory role on Castlevania Lords of Shadow, and providing the voice of the game's Chupacabra. The next game to slip through his fingers would have just been a Kojima Productions title, not an esteemed Hideo Kojima game. It's Zone of the Enders 3. Zoe's always been Koji Pro's second biggest franchise, and despite its critical success, it never achieved big-time sales, something Kojima blamed himself for, saying he scheduled the second game's release date at the wrong time, and that good games don't always get their due. At a 2012 event promoting an upcoming HD collection of the first two games, Kojima announced a third title was in the works, and showed off some concept art and physical models used in its development. At the time, his team was going back and forth between making it anime-styled or giving it a more live-action look, the latter of which would have worked better with the Fox engine that powered it, the same Fox engine used in MGS5. Work on Zoe 3 started years earlier, in fact, with evidence left over in Snake Eater. That game's hidden nightmare sequence was actually an early Zoe 3 prototype. The nightmare, called Guy Savage, got cut out of later re-releases like the MGS HD and Master Collections, but on PS2, if you save while Snake's locked up in Groznyj, Paramedic starts telling him a Dracula story. Snake's terrified of vampires for some reason, so afterwards he falls asleep and has a playable nightmare. Essentially, it's a hack-and-slash minigame, an early taste of what this version of Zoe 3 might have been like.
What I'm doing isn't for the ranch, it's for us.
You having fun yet?
You should be scared.
I will avenge you.
Zoe 3 development dropped off, but picked back up in 2008, with Kojima publicly promising fans they'd get to play it someday. Those fans were understandably expecting more space robots, like the first two games, but Kojima was concerned that it'd limit its audience mostly just to Japan. To appeal to a broader market, he said, "I was about to make a Lord of the Rings-style fantasy Zoe, but when I pitched it to fans, they told me to stop, so I gave up on that direction. Anime, photorealism, zombie cops, Lord of the Rings, robots. Koji Pro seemingly didn't know what to do with the project. They were also short-handed, with most of the studio knee-deep in Metal Gear. After working on it off and on for a decade, in 2013, Kojima announced Zoe 3 was cancelled and its team disbanded, citing the HD Collection's failure to meet expectations. During this time, Kojima oversaw Metal Gear Solid Rising from afar, a role he'd reprise on Revengeance after Rising got canned. Again, that got covered extensively in the cancelled Metal Gear games video, so check that out later for what happened with Rising. Then, of course, there's the now infamous cancelled game Silent Hills.
We regret to report the murder of a wife and her 2 children by their husband and father. The father purchased a rifle used in the crime at his local gun store 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon. The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved
In 2014, Kojima released a PlayStation 4 demo called PT under the fake developer name 7780 Studio. 7780s was a made-up studio that didn't exist. It was all a Kojima mind game. At the end, the truths revealed that PT stood for Playable Teaser and was in fact his demo for a new Silent Hill. It's scary because there's no information, Kojima told the Japan Times. Nowadays when people don't know something, they Google it. They ask on Twitter or Facebook and they get the answer right away. We live in an age of information. When that suddenly disappears, that's the scariest thing. That's why there was no information about who made PT. That's why I hid my name and title and just let them play. The demo took place in one tiny looping hallway, with a bathroom that the player walks through over and over, becoming slightly redecorated, darker, and creepier with each passing loop. The game relies almost entirely on atmosphere, while eschewing cheap tricks like jump scares and grotesque violence. The real fear isn't from those things, Kojima explained. It's from standing in an empty place, where just a step forward or turn around is scary. All you can do is walk and look, but despite the cramped quarters and limited moveset, some puzzles were pretty cryptic, so Kojima expected no one to be able to solve it for at least a week. To his surprise, some fans finished PT day one, and were treated to a cutscene revealing that they'd been playing as Walking Dead star Norman Reedus all along, and also that it had been made in collaboration with film director Guillermo del Toro of Pan's Labyrinth fame. PT was just a teaser developed in 4 months. The full game would be very different.
The one thing I can tell about Silent Hills, this is something that I've been talking with Guillermo del Toro as well, but originally we were thinking of making a game that would make you pee your pants, but at this point we've changed our minds and we are aiming for a game that will make you shit your pants.
Kojima would later say the game engine was designed for open world. Interestingly, PT's ending cutscene wasn't CGI. It was rendered in real time in-engine, and a modder named Lance McDonald hacked it to explore the town beyond the hallway. Unfinished and not reflective of the final game, of course, but a small taste perhaps of what Silent Hills might have looked like. Kojima also said Silent Hills would either let you choose between first or third person views, or it'd switch back and forth automatically based on the situation. He hadn't decided yet. Either way, he forecast an approximate release date sometime in 2016. Unfortunately, life had other plans, because in early 2015, rumors started to spread that after 3 decades at Konami, Kojima'd be out the door as soon as The Phantom Pain was finished. Those rumors soon gave way to official announcements, along with a statement from Konami saying Silent Hills was cancelled. Not only that, but they were going to delete PT from the PlayStation Store almost immediately. Fan remakes are easy to find online, but if you want to play the original PT nowadays, you'll have to drop hundreds on a secondhand PS4 that still has it downloaded. We're thinking of making a full-length video just about PT and Silent Hills to fill in even more texture and detail. Please do let us know in the comments if you think we should. But for now, let's get back to the broader topic. With Kojima and Konami parting ways, he was finally free to pour himself into something other than Metal Gear. Within months, he started his own studio and got to work on some new projects. The first to see daylight was 2019's Death Stranding, with Norman Reedus returning in the starring role. But after decades of dreaming up weird ideas, Kojima actually wanted his first independent venture to be something a little more safe. He told the BBC, "This game is to start with, like Guillermo del Toro told me, not a way to break out, but to make something that the fans expect. There are new elements to the game, but the basis is something people are used to playing." On the other hand, Kojima also marketed it as the world's first Strand game, an open world in a new genre defined by its asymmetric online features and social connections, like picking up packages someone else dropped, or driving down roads built by the community, despite being a single-player experience. As far as story, it's still fairly new, so we don't want to get into spoiler territory, but as you'd expect from Kojima, it does get pretty strange and confusing. Gameplay-wise, it's mostly delivering packages, schlepping bridge babies, and fighting off otherworldly creatures across an apocalyptic America. Hard to believe Kojima didn't think all that was weird. He considered Death Stranding the safe play for his new studio. You'll hear about some he does consider weird here in a minute. One idea he gave up on recently was a superhero game, or rather an anti-superhero game, which he abandoned after realizing someone else had just done something similar. In 2022, Kojima tweeted about the popular TV show The Boys, which debuted the same year development wrapped on Death Stranding. Translated into English, his tweet said, "I watched The Boys up to Season 1, Episode 3. I'm thinking about watching the rest. I was actually about to start work on a plan I'd been cooking up for a long time, but after I saw a few episodes, I realized the concept was similar, but with a different setting and setup, so I shelved it. It was going to be about 2 special investigators, one male and one female, facing off against legendary superheroes behind the scenes. I pictured Mads as the lead. That's Mads Mikkelsen, the Danish movie star who played Cliff in Death Stranding. For those who haven't seen it, The Boys follows a team of ordinary humans determined to kill superheroes, because in-universe, supes aren't the altruistic good guys like in comics and Hollywood movies. They're more like corrupt politicians with godlike powers, worshipped by the masses, a dangerous cog in the military-industrial complex. Over the next few weeks, Kojima said he went on to watch more episodes and loved it, and that, quote, "The concept of a dark anti-hero story about superheroes and people facing off against them was the same as what I'd been planning, but the setting, setup, and tone were greatly different compared to how The Boys did it. He didn't want to be derivative, so he binned it." We're getting pretty close to the end of Kojima's 30-plus year career so far, and the last of the games he couldn't make. But there's a few more interesting ideas worth mentioning, and they're recent enough that they might still be in play. We mentioned before that in the early 2000s, Kojima mulled over games that differed depending on your environment. He ended up making Boktai, a world that changed with your exposure to sunlight. But Kojima was also tinkering with a speed-based concept, or a game that shifted with the temperature of your surroundings. In 2021, he said he wanted to evolve what games can be by revisiting those old ideas. Maybe even have a game change based on your own feelings. On 9/11's 20th anniversary, he told Japanese outlet Anan News, "What I want to make is a game that changes in real time. Even though there's people of different ages and careers around the world, they're all playing games the same way. So not based on those characteristics, but something that changes with a person's location or how they feel about it. These kinds of setups make a man-made system feel more real, like the sun in Boktai." He went on to vaguely describe another goal he sounds pretty serious about. Quote, "Gamers are getting more creative. Up till now, it's been a world of developers, players, and critics. But nowadays, there are pro gamers and gaming commentators, and even more recently, in-game cameramen. I have to clear up some copyright issues, but I have an idea that goes even further in that direction. I haven't been able to start working on it yet, though." As a creator, I'm happy things don't just end with me making a game and people playing it, even though I don't get paid any extra money from it. I build the field everyone plays on. It's like how even after the 9th inning of a baseball game comes to an end, the field doesn't just disappear. It continues to be used and enjoyed by countless people. After Snake Eater, one of the early ideas floating around for a sequel was Snake in Space. That was 20 years ago, but Kojima still hasn't given up on the idea of a space game. In fact, he wants to go there himself for research, and he wants you to go up there too, to play it. On stage at the 2023 Tribeca Film Festival, he looked to the future and said,
I want to go to outer space, right? I want to go to outer space and create a game that you could play in space. Because right now, all games you can't probably play in outer space, but I want to create something. So someone please send me up to space.
Crazy.
We're genuinely unsure if he was joking or serious. Maybe half and half. And we'd be remiss not to mention, remember that cloud-based experience we touched on earlier? While this video was in production, Kojima revealed it's coming to life as a horror game called OD at the 2023 Game Awards.
With help of Xbox Game Studios and using their cloud gaming technology to make immersive and also something that no one has seen before is what I'm trying to do. And it is a game, don't get me wrong, but it's at the same time a movie, but at the same time a new form of media.
Kojima will be partnering with horror director Jordan Peele, plus more collaborators he isn't willing to reveal yet. He had a busy few months as this video was wrapping up actually. He also revealed Death Stranding 2 On the Beach, and an action espionage game called Fizzant, but that's still some years out. Kojima fans have been begging for a new Metal Gear for almost a decade, and Fizzant ain't that. But maybe it's the next best thing. After a health scare during the pandemic, thinking he might die, Kojima decided maybe it'd be nice to give the fans what they'd been asking for so long, before he's too old to deliver. The old codger's still got one in him. Lots more, hopefully.
Thousands of games that only existed on old Japanese cell phones. And I don't mean just random shovelware that, no one really cares about. We're talking Pokemons, Final Fantasies, Castlevanias, Resident Evil, Crash's Bandicoot, Sonic's the Hedgehog, Breaths of Fire, Mega Men, Monsters Hunter, Professor Layton. There are too many big series here to even highlight. But here's a quick list of what we'd probably consider to be the top 30. A lot of them were made by the original console teams with serious budgets and reached the quality of GBA and PSP games. That's not to say there wasn't any outsourced crap, plenty of that too, but today we're gonna focus on the good stuff. But the clock is ticking, and if no one saves these games, they will inevitably become lost media. In fact, most of them already are classified as lost media. So, a few months ago, we bought over 300 phones from Japan to rip the games off of them, and teamed up with a small preservation community who've been busy hacking, dumping, and building emulators before time runs out. In this video, we'll show some big games that have been saved and some that are still lost, and briefly summarize their history, as well as what the future may hold. Emulators are already running on PC with controller support, and more recently, also made playable on Steam Deck. If the next few years are fruitful, we could be playing more games on more devices in English. But what about the people that aren't really interested in playing these old cell phone games? Well, there's also the prospect of harvesting their assets, like unique Pokemon sprites and animations, in-canon lore for Final Fantasy, so many game soundtracks, stuff like that. But if the next few years don't go well, so much game history is gonna stay buried forever. Before the iPhone and the rise of worldwide mobile gaming in the early 2010s, there already was a robust gaming scene in Japan. Back then they used feature phones, better than the phones that we had in the West, but still a step down from modern smart devices. Starting in 1999 and continuing for almost 2 decades, big Japanese studios like Sega, Square Enix, and Capcom were making games solely dedicated to these devices. Collectively, they are known as Keitai games. One of the biggest publishers was Capcom, who released about 20 Mega Man titles, including Mega Man Panic Fire and Mega Man Tennis, along with Mega Man GP, which plays a bit like F-Zero. A lot of them were pretty minor experiences, but the star of the show was Mega Man Legends, great adventure on the 5 islands. Series fans often lament that Capcom only made Legends 1 and 2, but there actually was a 3rd entry, released in 2008. We're happy to say all games just mentioned were released publicly a few months ago and preserved. Big shout out to my boy, Rockman Cosmos in particular, who led the charge and played a big part in making this video. Great Adventure on the 5 Islands was a holy grail of a find, and all the credit goes to him and his team. They also got a couple more Mega Man Battle Network games, Phantom of the Network and Legend of the Network, which were basically lost sequels to the popular GBA RPG series. These two have already been patched into English, with even more titles currently in the works. 5 Islands is currently being translated, and there'll be links in the video's description if you want to play them for yourself. So far, 8 Mega Man games have been preserved, but even more are still out there somewhere undiscovered, including Mega Man Legends Golf and Mega Man Intuition, which was a WarioWare-style microgame collection. Capcom also
With Shark Flex Breeze fans, there's 2 ways to chill, and no limit to where you can bring the breeze. Own
Alright, back again this time for my ultimate fan-made projects video so far. Mods, conversions, ground-up original creations, they're all here. But to avoid issues, I'm gonna lump everything together here by addressing them all as simply fan projects. But I'll make sure to label everything more accurately on screen. These are passion projects where fans spend countless hours creating new works, usually without financial incentive. And honestly, some of these are even better than official releases. This is a niche world of games, not known by most players, and because of their nature, you usually have to dig for them. That said, I'm going to be going over more than 50 of them here, so hopefully you'll find something that sparks your interest. And in this episode, I'm going to go over a few of the heavy hitters that are really highly requested that I touch on. This being a mega video, I'll start off by talking about a bunch of new stuff that I'm talking about here for the very first time. And then after that, I'll transition to the stuff that I've already covered in the past for new viewers. Alright, and now that that's out of the way, let's get this thing rolling. First up is Super Mario Bros. CD, a really special approach to this sort of SNES project. In short, it basically springs from a cool what-if idea. What if Nintendo released a CD-ROM add-on for the original NES or Famicom back in the day? Built on the Super Mario World engine, it imagines a Mario game for that fictional hardware, somewhat in a similar vein to what Sonic CD was able to do thanks to the Sega CD. Its presentation is immediately noticeable as just slightly pushing things past what we saw in the NES. The team behind this project uses the SNES's graphics mode 0 extensively to allow for 4 background layers, which, used in a smart way, can create a lot of depth and parallax scrolling. And the result is a visual style that's meant to look like an enhanced 8-bit game. But that look paired with the CD-style audio using the MSU1 enhancements enable an original soundtrack with a time-appropriate city pop feel. And while there's nothing in the demo just yet for this, I know that past MSU1 projects had the possibility of putting in fully animated cutscenes. All that said, the core gameplay is the 2D platforming that you know and love from Mario. This one still is a work in progress with the goal of including over 40 different interconnected levels, but what's here already is enough to appreciate to see what the Famicom CD team is going for. It's a clever use of newer developments for the SNES that simulate a game and a piece of hardware that's a fun what-if, which I think creates something super distinct within the Mario fan game community. Next up is another Mario project, but this time it's for Super Mario Sunshine on the GameCube, called Super Mario Eclipse. This is one that came out in August 2024 after a 4-year-long wait, and it's one of the most impressive GameCube fan projects of this kind that I've seen. It's a massive expansion built on the 2002 original that adds basically an entire new game's worth of content, with 120 new stars, while also ironing out some of the rough edges of the original. As for the new stuff, there are a bunch of new levels and a ton of little tweaks to the gameplay. You're also not just stuck playing as Mario, because you can unlock Luigi and Il Piantissimo that each have their own gameplay feel. The nice quality of life changes here are also super appreciated, like removing the need to leave the level after finding a shine, which allows you to feel much more present in each environment. The structure also shifts towards a more interconnected Isle Delfino, letting you find paths between each of the areas. It also packs in new enemies and boss fights, so for Mario Sunshine fans looking for more content and some nice tweaks, this is a massive undertaking worth checking out.
Super Mario Eclipse!
Here's a cool one from the Doom modding scene, Doom: The Golden Souls 3. Being developed by Bat Andy, it isn't just new maps, it's a total conversion of Doom 2 running in GZ Doom that takes Doom's first-person shooting and it mashes it with a collectathon platformer straight off the N64, like Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie. The structure shifts away from the typical Doom key hunt linearity. You start in a hub world that connects to these big, colorful sandbox levels, and your main goal is to be collecting these golden souls, which act like power stars or jiggies by completing quests and objectives within these stages. You'll also be hunting down secondary items like the Slayer coins, which are similar to Mario's red coins. But the biggest change is how Doom Guy moves here. He gets new abilities like ledge climbing, wall jumping, and a long jump. And as you can imagine, this completely changes the feel away from the typical Doom-style movement. It's built for traversing open levels filled with secrets, but of course, you're still shooting demons while you're bounding around. Visually, this mod goes for bright and playful with N64-inspired graphics, which is a fun thing to see in the Doom engine. And yeah, since this is the third in a series, there are the previous two available to fool around with, but I think that playing 3 is so much of an improvement on those that this is the one worth trying out and keeping an eye on. Alright, finally, it's time for me to check out a proper Pokemon fan project called Pokemon Fool's Gold. It's built on top of Pokemon Crystal for the Game Boy Color, the Pokemon game that I personally have a ton of nostalgia for, so expect that classic Gen 2 look and feel. But the hook here is pretty ambitious. The creator, Celadonk, took all 251 original Pokemon and completely redid them. So forget what you know about Charmander or Pidgey. In this hack, every single creature has a new alt-universe take, with new typing and different moves. Think of them as regional fakes, like finding a Clefairy that's now a fire type. You still journey through the familiar Johto region collecting badges and heading to the Pokemon League followed by Kanto, but because every Pokemon is different, it's a fun twist on a familiar game. You'll need to figure out the new type matchups and what each redesigned Pokemon can do. It also added some nice quality of life changes like the physical special split from the newer games and TMs that you can reuse. And with one of the later post-release updates, they even tacked on a whole new post-game area, the Sevi Islands, which are populated with even more redesigned Pokemon from Gen 3. Some designs here are clever reinterpretations, while others might look a bit strange, but the effort is obviously here. If you like the structure of the old Pokemon games, but you want a fresh set of creatures to find and train, Fool's Gold is definitely worth looking into. It makes Johto feel like something that's really a new thing to discover yet again. Next up is a fan game from the Mega Man community called Mega Man Quint's Revenge. This one picks up where the story left off for Quint. You know, the character that everyone loves and knows? Okay, but obviously not. Now, if you've never played Mega Man 2 on the Game Boy, it's really easy not to have that name spark any recognition. But in that game, Dr. Wily grabbed a version for Mega Man from the future, brainwashed him, and gave him a weird pogo stick to go up against the proper Mega Man that we all know and love. In that game, he just teleports away after being beaten and is never heard from again. But in this fan game, it reimagines what happens next for him. So after Dr. Wily ditches him out of disappointment, Quint breaks free from the programming and decides that it's payback time against the doctor who pulled him from his time. So this is a ground-up creation for the PC that's aiming for that classic 8-bit Mega Man feel. And you play as Quint, who's going through these stages inspired by Mega Man 2 and 3 on the NES. But he doesn't exactly play like traditional Mega Man. He gets some new moves from the later games, like a dash, longer jumps, and the ability to duck. It makes the action feel way faster and adds different ways to get through the levels. And if this all sounds way too different for you, don't worry, it's still the robot masters getting defeated like Woodman or Needleman, and you get their weapons, sticking to the core formula. Visually, it looks just like an NES game, and the creator even went through the effort of remixing the Game Boy's music for this more plussed-up release. So if you're into classic Mega Man and you want to see an obscure character get his own adventure, check out Quint's Revenge. Now onto two fan-made standouts, Castlevania The Lacard Chronicles 1 and 2 made by Megami Games for the PC. The first entry was released back in 2013, and it throws you straight back into that classic-style Castlevania mold. You play as Efrain Lacard, a knight who's connected to Eric from Bloodlines, who's fighting evil across 18th century France. So expect a mix of classic Castlevania ideas, with platforming sections, challenging bosses, and the familiar sub-weapons. That said, it also does pull from the Simon's Quest mold a bit, with a town to explore with NPCs to help and guide you on your adventure. And then in 2017, the second game came out, and it changes the approach up quite a bit. The sequel draws even more inspiration from Simon's Quest, but it also dips its toes into stuff from like Symphony of the Night, where it's a much more open map design that's about you carving your own path. Getting stronger here means finding items hidden throughout the world, health and heart upgrades, better weapons and armor, and special relics that act as keys to gain access to new locations. This design choice makes hunting down secrets feel a lot more necessary. There's even a day and night cycle that changes the state of towns that brings out the tougher enemies after dark. The amount of love that went into this series, especially Alucard Chronicles 2, is stunning. They even go as far as to get Robert Belgrade back to voice Alucard. So for anyone missing that classic style Castlevania, these are definitely worth finding, especially the second one. Next up is a game that I get a ton of requests for, and I'm finally going to do it here. ZIAOL. Ziaol? What really matters is that it's a remaster for the PC of Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. And that said, remaster is selling it a bit short. The developer Hoverbat took the original game's code and translated it into GameMaker, allowing for more extrapolation on what was already there. So this means that the game really does feel and look just like Zelda 2. The way Link moves, the timing of the combat, how enemies act, it's all faithfully close to the 1987 classic. But they also went in and tweaked things, adding a bunch of new helpful features like smoothing out some of the rough spots that made the original game so notoriously tough. First off, it supports widescreen displays natively and has smooth scrolling, which is a really nice, super clean, crisp way to play through this game. There's also an in-game map that fills out as you explore dungeons, and the heads-up display has more useful information on hand, like your current spell and key count. You also only lose some of your XP towards your next level when you get a game over, so it's not as punishing. The dialogue also moves faster, and dying in the dungeon sends you back to the entrance instead of far away. So the tweaks that Hoverbat did here are really appreciated. It's a refreshing take that keeps the core challenge, but removes a lot of the early game design frustration. So if the original Zelda 2 put you off, this might be a version that clicks with you. Oh, and there's a randomizer also built in, so if you want an extra challenge, you can check out those options as well.
Sitting thinking about you're just seeing my
Next up is a fan project that's made huge waves, and that is Undertale Yellow. Developed over 7 years, it dropped for free on PC in
sealing her up. It's gonna be a little bit of a challenge. What I could potentially do is close that circle into, or like cut it into multiple parts. Or at least just one cut that I can then just go along and like fold the way that I did this other part. The circle as I'm putting glue on everything. That might be the best way. Yeah. Like I'm still gonna reinforce it. I think it'll be fine. But I think that would be the best way to do this. This is exciting. It's coming to fruition. All right, let's glue this next part. Just needed a little break, a little thinking, a little noggin.
In the late 2023, but this isn't just some mod, it's a full-blown prequel to Undertale, even going as far as building it in the same engine. You play as Clover, a kid with a yellow soul, with a mission to head down into the underground before Frisk does, to find out what happened to the 5 human kids who disappeared there earlier. You can't really find any other original Undertale fan game that will be so official feeling. There's a ton of effort and work put into this, especially with the new monsters that take on the different turn-based bullet hell battles that you know and love, but do it in their own new ways. And for the most part, it's pretty faithful to the original Undertale, but that said, it also does a few of its own unique things. Like, Clover uses a toy gun, so when you issue a fight command, it involves timing shots on your targets. And while you will see familiar locations like Snowdin again, Clover's journey takes you through new spots too, like the western-themed dunes or the mechanical steamworks. There's a whole cast of new characters like the Guard Marlit, Sheriff Starlo, and the oddly complex Cereba. Flowey also appears acting as a guide and handling your saves. The pixel art is as sharp as ever, and the animations look really nice and smooth, paired with the fantastic original yet controversial soundtrack here. Google it. It's just really satisfying. It is often tougher than the original game, but with handy additions like running and immediate boss retires, it smooths out some of that stuff too. So for anyone who loves Undertale, this fan creation is absolutely worth checking out. Okay, while I'm knocking out some of the biggest fan projects, it's time to finally talk about AM2R, another Metroid 2 remake. It's a ground-up reimagining of Metroid 2 Return of Samus for the Game Boy. The main idea, though, was to take the old black and white adventure and give it a new look that feels more like the later Metroid games, specifically pulling from Super Metroid and Metroid Zero Mission. It originally came out for PC back in 2016, and it was the core of one of the biggest firestorms around Nintendo using legal threats to protect its own IP. Which is a lot to unpack, so I'm not really going to get into that here. I'll just recommend you go check out the Geek Critiques video on AM2R, where they go more in depth and are way more thorough on a game and go into some of the history on that end. But as for the game itself, it changed a lot for the better. Samus controls way better, feeling way more closer to how she does on the SNES or the GBA. She also gets abilities like better aiming, wedge grabs, wall jumping, and the speed booster that make it feel much more in line with the other games in the series. But most importantly, gone is the guesswork of the original Game Boy game. AM2R adds a auto-map system just like my favorite Metroid game, Zero Mission. There's even a logbook that adds bits of story about the planet SR388, the Chozo, and the creatures you find. Visually, it swaps the Game Boy's simple look for colorful, detailed pixel art that is a huge improvement. Though, that said, every once in a while there's an effect that looks just un-Nintendo enough to signal in the back of your mind that this is indeed a fan project. But regardless, it looks good when you're not trying to nitpick it like that. The sound also got a major upgrade too, with a full musical score that builds the atmosphere that every Metroid fan would want. While the straightforward goal is still hunting down all the Metroids to open up the deeper parts of the planet, the journey is different. The map is bigger with new zones, secrets, and even some new bosses beyond the Metroids themselves. It's a wildly polished reimagining that's gotten so many different branches that separate and fan projects built on top of it that it's kind of arguable within the Metroid community if it's an official Metroid canon kind of game, if you know what I mean. It's part of the fan base's core, set of games, if you get what I'm saying. So definitely check that one out if you are a Metroid fan like myself. First up is The Legend of Zelda: The Missing Link, a Zelda fan project by Kei Zemanuar. It aims to bridge the narrative gap between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and it offers a completely new, albeit short, adventure built within the Ocarina of Time engine. It also features a slightly darker, more atmospheric tone with unsettling music that provides the perfect little segue into the more sinister vibes of Majora's Mask. So if you're a fan of Zelda on the N64, I think you'd probably enjoy this one as a quick standalone treat. Next is Sonic and the Fallen Star, a Sonic the Hedgehog fan game by Team Stardrop, and it's a full-ass new Sonic game. 9 completely new zones, amazing original art, and a shockingly excellent soundtrack. As things go for fan games, this is one that can easily stand right next to the official releases. The production values here, especially the detailed stages and the expressive character sprites, and even the cutscenes, are just top-tier work. The amount of content here and the quality of it makes it stand out in a sea of lesser Sonic fan projects. So if you want another great Sonic game and haven't given this one a shot yet, you're missing out. Then we have Mother Cognitive Dissonance, a fan-made Earthbound RPG that tells the backstory of Geeg and his transformation into Gigas, connecting Earthbound beginnings and Earthbound. It's got its own story, exploring a part of the Mother universe that we haven't seen before. And the party is pretty wild here, with familiar enemies and even Mr. Saturn. And the fact that you can travel to different planets and there are multiple endings depending on what you do is just a really cool touch. So if you're a die-hard Earthbound fan, especially if you're into fanon, you'll probably dig this. Then we have Streets of Rage Remake, which is a Streets of Rage fan game by Bomberlink. It's an incredibly polished remake of the Genesis Streets of Rage trilogy for PC. And it's awesome because it doesn't really just recreate the original 3 games, it throws in a ton of new stuff, like extra characters, enemies, levels, and game modes. Plus it's got a remixed soundtrack, and they even put some of the stuff that was cut from the original games back in, like the motorcycle stages from Streets of Rage 3. So if you're an SOR fan, or just like beat 'em up games, you'll probably love this. It's easily one of the best made fan games using the open bore engine. Moving on to Final Fantasy Renaissance, a Final Fantasy remake by Renaissance Games. What's cool about this one is that it's both a straight-up recreation of the original and a Renaissance mode, with 10 brand new classes and tons of tweaks to make everything feel totally plussed up. Like for example, they added nice quality of life stuff like showing which items you can equip and auto-targeting. If you're a Final Fantasy fan, especially the first games on the NES, you'd really get a kick out of this one. Banjo-Kazooie Jiggies of Time is a Banjo-Kazooie fan project by the prolific Mark Kirko, and I'm sure I'll be talking about more stuff from him in the future of this series. But this one's a full game that mixes Banjo-Kazooie with the Ocarina of Time. It turns Banjo-Kazooie's world into Ocarina of Time locations, with Zelda-themed looks for everyone and everything. It also adds a bunch of gameplay tweaks, remixed music from the Zelda games, and new challenges that use Banjo and Kazooie's moves in cool Hyrulean ways. If you're a fan of either Banjo-Kazooie or Ocarina of Time, or just like 3D platformers, this one's for you. Rockman No Constancy is a really popular Mega Man 2 fan project by Ica. It totally overhauls Mega Man 2 for the NES, changing practically everything about it. It's got a whole new soundtrack, completely redesigned levels, and new sprites, so it feels totally different than Mega Man 2. The Robot Masters may look familiar here, but their themes and how they act and what their weapons do are totally different. And it's even tougher than ever, so if you're a Mega Man 2 pro and are looking for a real challenge, or if you just like new takes on beloved classics, you should check this one out. Sonic Mega Mix is a Sonic the Hedgehog fan project that is a heavily modified version of the original Sonic the Hedgehog with Sega CD enhancements. It's a total reimagining of the original Sonic, with new playable characters like Shadow and added moves like the Spin Dash and Air Dash and completely redesigned levels. So if you've already checked out Sonic and the Fallen Star and need another fix of the blue blur, or just want a game with more of a feel for the classic style of Genesis games, check this one out. Golden Axe Returns is a Golden Axe fan game by Z Vitor. It's a fan-made sequel built in the open bore engine, set between Golden Axe 3 and Revenge of Death Adder. It's cool because it builds on the classic Golden Axe gameplay by adding cool new features like throwable weapons and special attacks. It also boasts a huge roster of characters from across the Golden Axe series, remixed music, and 4-player widescreen co-op. So this is another one that if you love Genesis-era beat-em-ups, you'll probably love this. Waluigi's Taco Stand is another fan project from Kei's Emanuar, and in this one, you play as Waluigi, who has to run a taco stand to pay his rent after he gambles all of his and Wario's money away. It's actually inspired by a fanfic that is over 500 pages long, but don't worry, you don't need to engage with any of that. It's just a silly game where you take taco orders and then have to go run around grabbing ingredients to make those tacos. It's a rare chance to play as Waluigi, and the whole taco stand thing just oddly fits his whole weird vibe. So if you want an offbeat take on Mario 64, you'd get a kick out of this. Next up is Super Metroid Ascent, a Super Metroid fan project from Beanox50. It's a total redesign focused on exploring and solving puzzles. And it's awesome because it also looks and sounds incredible, with updated graphics, cool parallax effects, and a custom soundtrack. And the way that it's designed is that you can't go back to earlier areas in some cases, which is a pretty unique decision and sets it apart from a lot of other Metroid fan projects. So if you're a Super Metroid fan who's looking for a new challenge or just love exploring games, you'll probably dig this one. Just make sure you master the wall jump first. Power Bomberman is a Bomberman fan game that is really polished, but it's a straightforward take on the series. But the main thing here is that it's got online multiplayer and a bunch of different game modes. It's just loaded with tons of stuff: stages, abilities, power-ups, characters, all from the classic Bomberman games, but with tons of ways to customize. But ultimately boiled down, this is just a straightforward, simple take on classic Bomberman, just delivered in a really polished way. If you want a new online party game to play with a bunch of friends on Discord, you'll probably have a blast with this one. Abobo's Big Adventure is a classic Flash game, but I bet there's a ton of younger folks who have never even heard of it. It's an 8-bit parody game where you play as Abobo, the bruiser enemy from Double Dragon, who's trying to rescue his son, Aboboy, by going through levels that make fun of classic NES games. Yeah, the retro game memberberry humor is pretty tired now, but this game is one of the few things from that era of internet humor that I think is pretty solid still. The fact that each stage parodies a different NES game makes the gameplay really varied, and the fan service stuff kind of works here because it's done with such an understanding of what they're poking fun at. It's definitely dumb and over-the-top violent, but hey, it's a Newgrounds game. If you're into classic NES games, you'll probably have some fun with it. Then we have Super Surfing Pikachu DX, a simple Pokemon fan game by Cosmic Hierophant. It's inspired by the surfing minigame from Pokemon Yellow, but it takes that nostalgic Pokemon minigame and updates it with newer Pokemon, turning it into basically a side-scrolling shooter where you're dodging everything. This one's not huge or super ambitious, but I just think it's a really neat little oddity. So if you have a lot of nostalgia for that minigame and want to see a new, plussed-up take on it, you gotta check this one out for at least a minute. And finally, we've got Poco Road, a browser-based Pokemon roguelike, and it's all about the battles here, no overworld exploring. It's cool how it uses roguelike mechanics in the Pokemon battle system. The way you build your team with points and how catching Pokemon makes them available for later runs all add a lot of strategy to it. So if you're a hardcore Pokemon battling fan, or just like roguelikes and want a quick game, you could probably just load this one up on whatever you're watching this video on. Mega Man 8-Bit Deathmatch is a crazy awesome fan project that turns Mega Man into a fast-paced, chaotic, classic-style first-person shooter. So imagine blasting enemies with the Mega Buster, Ice Slasher, and Firestorm, but it's all in this 3D style arena. It translates the 8-bit NES Mega Man style vibe into 3D really well, shockingly. While the focus is mostly on the multiplayer experience here, I found the single player mode to be still more than enough for me. In the single player, you're going to be fighting your way through different time periods of the classic Mega Man timeline, facing off against tons of different robot masters in bot-filled deathmatch style games where each chapter ends with its own distinct boss, as well as tons of other cool inclusions for hardcore Mega Man fans. Like for me, I appreciated the inclusion of Time Man and Oil Man from my favorite Mega Man game, Powered Up. It's like this what-if scenario where if Dr. Wily threw Unreal Tournament. It's really neat. So if you're a fan of Mega Man or classic arena-style shooters, this is definitely a must-play. The Legend of Zelda Dungeons of Infinity is a roguelike take on A Link to the Past. So it's a Zelda game where every run is a brand new adventure filled with random traps, monsters, and treasures. The goal is to fight your way through 12 different floors, each one having different and more dangerous threats than the last. Each time you play, the layout changes, the enemies are new and different, and the loot is unpredictable. You can open a chest and find a new sword, or you could just get a curse that screws you over for the rest of your run. It's all in the luck of the draw. You'll need to be smart with your resources and your inventory space because if you get killed, it's back to square one. Overall, it's a love letter to the series, but with this roguelike twist, and I think any Zelda fan would be impressed by this. So I recently watched all of Ben Saint's amazing 13-hour-long Bionicle lecture, so that put me in the mood for Bionicle, and then I found Takuya 64. It's a total conversion that takes Mario 64 and turns it into a Bionicle game. It's like a time machine back to the early 2000s where you get to explore the iconic island of Matanui. You play as Takuya the Matoran, who's on a journey to collect all of the Toa stones that he will use to summon the legendary Toa to the island of Matanui. The game's got everything a Bionicle fan could want. Different biomes, era-appropriate Rockshi littering the island, and tons of secrets and details that are just there for the hardcore fans. All that said, while everything looks awesome and plays really smoothly, it can still be pretty tricky. As someone who's no Mario 64 expert, some of the platforming sections here are really tough, and there are no checkpoints, so if you're high up and fall down, it can get pretty frustrating. So, maybe lean on some save states or something. But overall, if you're a Bionicle fan and love Mario 64, you should definitely look into this. It's a huge labor of love and brings a classic franchise to life in a new way, and it would make any Bionicle fan happy. Doom Infinite is a super cool fan-made game that, just like Dungeons of Infinity, takes a classic game, Doom in this case, and transforms it into a roguelike. It's currently in demo form, but it's still really impressive and I can't wait to see what this turns into in its full release. You start each run with a random weapon and a power-up, but as you blast your way through the hordes of demons, you'll come across new weapons and abilities. It's got a great mix of old-school Doom action and modern roguelike design elements. It's fast-paced, just like Doom always was, and really challenging. If you're a fan of Doom or roguelikes, you should definitely check this one out. And I think that there's enough juice here that maybe id Software itself should look into considering doing something similar in an official capacity, maybe. This is just a great idea. Super Mario 3 Mix is a love letter to the entire Mario franchise. It's a popular fan project that takes Super Mario Bros. 3 on the NES into a new, ambitious, nostalgia-filled game. Just like Mario normally, you're going to be going through different worlds, but in this case, the different worlds you're traveling through are inspired by different Mario games, like Mario 1, Mario 2, 3, World, and even Sunshine. You even get to choose who you play as between Mario, Luigi, and even my boy Toad. It's got tons of new power-ups, enemies, and secrets. You can glide through the skies with the bunny ears, throw ice with the penguin suit, and even toss boomerangs. If you're looking for a fun, challenging, and nostalgic 2D Mario game, Super Mario 3 Mix is definitely worth checking out. Hyper Metroid is an ambitious Super Metroid conversion that reimagines it as a more open-ended map. The story setup here, though, is admittedly a bit too try-hard edgy for my taste, but it's set in an alternate universe where the space pirates kill Samus's husband and her soon-to-be-born child. So it's a little bit too dark and weird. But once you get past that, the game itself, though, is really great. The world is massive and full of secrets with tons of hidden paths and power-ups to discover. It's much more hands-off about where you need to go and how you need to get there, making it feel a lot more exploratory. The enemies are tougher and the atmosphere is even more unsettling. So if you're a fan of Super Metroid and want a good challenge, Hyper Metroid is definitely for you. Pokemon fighting games have been tried in the past, whether it's been Pokken Tournament or their inclusion in Smash Bros. It's always felt like there's something not quite right. So here you have Pokemon Close Combat. It tries things a little bit differently, and it's really neat. It basically takes an old-school Street Fighter style 2D fighting game and gives you a plethora of different fighting-type Pokemon to fight as. So basically, this is like Pokemon battles between trainers, but you're just controlling the Pokemon directly. Each one has their own unique moves and fighting styles, so there's actually a lot of technical depth to this. But for me, as a fighting game scrub, I just really like the details here. I mean, look at these awesome stage backgrounds and hand-drawn sprites. I really love the sketchy look that everything has. You can play solo, where you're fighting your way through this loose arcade mode, or fight online or in local multiplayer battles. This is one that is currently still being worked on, so it's not 100% complete, but I think this is already a really fun time if you're a fan of Pokemon and fighting game. Star Fox 64 Survival is a game that sounds like something that it isn't. It takes The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and turns it into a Star Fox-themed survival game. You play as Fox McCloud, crash-landed on a mysterious planet, and you've got to survive for 30 days. And that's a pretty cool concept, but since the game is combat-focused, the Ocarina of Time combat might not be everyone's cup of tea, but regardless, you'll need to fight off monsters, scavenge for resources, and manage your health and supplies to make it through. So if you are a fan of Zelda's combat and like cool little experimental fan projects, this is definitely worth checking out. Castlevania The Holy Relics is a 2017 fan project from the creator of the awesome Metroid Rogue Dawn that I talked about in my last video. It's a completely new, awesome, polished Castlevania game. The structure here, though, takes a page out of the Mega Man book, because you can play any of the first 5 stages in any order that you want, each ending with you gaining a new relic that allows you to do new abilities for the rest of your playthrough. And then only after you beat those 5 stages, you take on the final stage. So, you know, kind of Mega Man. To add another layer on top of this, I played through the improved control version of this that gives you a bit more air control than the typical standard NES Castlevania, you know, jump and commit kind of gameplay. So with that tweak on top of this already awesome new game, it can really be put up there next to Castlevania 3 as one of, if not the best Castlevania on the NES. So if you want a challenging but fair game that refines the classic Castlevania formula, this one's worth taking a look at. Zelda Escape from the Facility is a nice little hour-long game that's kind of like a one-shot dungeon that you might find in a bigger Zelda game. It was created for a Zelda escape room competition, and the first thing that probably stuck out to you about this is its industrial steampunk look that redresses the whole world and even Link himself. You'll be solving puzzles to gain access to new areas, but since you start empty-handed, instead of the prevalence of keys, you'll be finding more items than the typical Zelda dungeon. And those are what restrict the access from different sections of the dungeon, which make it kind of feel a lot more Metroidvania-y than the normal Zelda dungeon. There are even some new items that are made specifically for this, and it's a nice short game that if you want a quick hit of a Zelda dungeon with the exploration and stuff you'd expect, this really could just hit the spot in an hour or less. Celeste Mario's Zap and Dash mixes Celeste's platforming and dashing with Super Mario Bros. It's the kind of fan project that is a honestly technical miracle, and it's super cool to see it pulled off on the NES within Super Mario Bros. Of all things. You can wall jump, air dash, and do even more Celeste-style mechanics that I don't really want to spoil here. But on top of the amazing feat of the gameplay, the graphics here are really gorgeous, and they use the NES color palette masterfully. The structure here even calls back to Mario Odyssey, where you collect moons that are all over the world, and for me to be even able to say that, that means there is a whole environment that you can explore. So instead of the linear level-based structure of Super Mario Bros., there's actually an interconnected map that you can poke around in. It is a precision platformer, so it is tough and requires some skill and patience, but it's got a really generous checkpoint system, and even when you're like stuck and struggling in a trial and error state, it's still really fun to play, and that's like an amazing game design feat, is to make sure the game feels good even when the player is failing. Simply put, this is a must-play for Mario fans, Celeste fans, or anyone who loves a great precision platformer. Smash Remix is one of the most impressive fan projects out there. It's an incredible community-made version of Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 64 that adds a ton of new characters, stages, and bosses. It's still the same classic Smash 64 at its core, but with a ton of stuff that just builds on top. Most of the new stuff here even being era-appropriate to the N64, like...
Just... oh my god. Seems like... should be... who am I kidding? I'm like halfway done. I keep saying I'm almost done, but I guess it's because the hardest part is pretty much over. Now it's just assembling everything, but I do still have to close it up, patch roll up, let that shit dry on one side, patch roll up again, let that shit dry. This also made me kind of want to make piñatas. It's pretty sick. Anyways, yeah. I ate some edibles, almost a little high. Whew. It's looking pretty nice though. I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out. I have an idea for a gray kind of... sorry if I'm like breathing into the microphone while it's hella quiet. I have an idea for what the paint job is gonna look like, but you know, tell God your plans and he'll laugh at your face or some shit like that. So far, so good though. Ugh. I should probably. We've been for 2 hours. I'm probably gonna take a little bit of a break from the camera just so I can use my phone for a second. Then again, I do have to do some shit at like 4 p.m. So maybe I should start wrapping up for now. And then finishing. Whew. Sorry, y'all. Just enjoying myself looking at it and thinking of it. It's kind of nice seeing it come to life. Like a lot of it, like I said, the hard parts are done, which was to create that like structural integrity. It's a lot of parts. I was really worried about it for a second when I was using the glue. The white glue. One more of those, then I do the outside ones. Then we patch her up. Well, I gotta do the caps too. It's gonna be a whole little engineering thing. Do I still have more of that other cardboard? I think I do. There's this one cardboard that has like really nice structure and integrity, and I think I want to use that one somewhere. And I know there's a piece right there. I feel like I saw a whole square. Oh yeah, right there. I see it. Yeah, we got enough. It's gonna be perfect for that. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make like a flap. Yeah, that's how I'm gonna do it. So I'm gonna do a flap. Huh. Whoa, my brain is like... Yeah, I think that way. Oh yeah, and that one needs to be bigger than that, so it has the hole. And then we're gonna glue that on top of that one. I guess I should probably do the flap close things before. So we can go on both sides. Oh wow, that's gonna be something. Sorry, I know I'm just like not talking and just thinking, but maybe I should draw that. Maybe. Yep, that makes sense. So it needs to be one of those. I honestly might use this in my room once it's done. It's turning out to be pretty sick. Damn, I should have been working on this for longer. If I had a month, which I did, but I just didn't start working on it. Could have done so much cool shit. That's good to know though. Oh, look at this. Look at this beauty. Now it's starting to look closer to what? There we go. To what we wanted. Gorgeous. It's also not that heavy yet. Dang. Okay. I'll be honest, I need more drink. Play some music. visual, I guess, for now.
we should get into... my friend.
We are back. We are back. Back at it again with the elotes. This is El Gran Show. After a delicious drink that shall not be named. Because fuck them, even though I'm addicted. You didn't see that? We'll keep going. I only have like 2 more hours left. So we need to keep this moving forward. We're watching this Jimmy Neutron revival video while we craft.
The main exciting reason for why we're talking about Jimmy Neutron so much, there's some news. There's some potential news.
Right. And how much did you, because I can kind of go over this as well if you didn't dig into it as deep.
Yeah, do you want to lead through it? I'll follow your lead.
So you mentioned that there was you heard something about a sequel movie had leaked, like a revival of some kind or a reboot.
Well, what I did was, because we had discussed in the previous episode about how THQ and Nordic had bought all these licenses but hadn't done anything with them. And so I had gone just to do some research because I was like, did they actually say that they had bought the licenses for those Jimmy Neutron games? And I was trying to search up for something for there. And then the annoying AI overview thing that just pops up all the bloody time? That popped up and said that, and gave me this information that, because I'm searching about Jimmy Neutron news, Jimmy Neutron, anything upcoming. And so they gave me this information about that. So I immediately jumped over and
you said it mentioned this, and then you said it's mentioned a game. I couldn't find anything about that. I think that was bullcrap. But
I think it was mentioning the game because I was searching about a game, so he was trying to tie it in.
And speaking of that, apparently they also have the rights to Rugrats games, but that doesn't make sense because that other company did a Rugrats game. I don't know. Anyways, so I looked into this. So apparently earlier this year, I want to say it looked like it was around February this year. So a couple months ago. So this one is in Spanish, but this was the only actual screenshot I could find. So this guy apparently put on his LinkedIn profile everything that he is working on or has been working on. And it mentions at the top, I guess I'll go he worked on an unannounced DreamWorks movie based on a very popular IP. Kind of curious about that one. Worked on some Beach Boys movie, childhood monsters project, just a bunch of crap. But then at the top it says Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius sequel for Paramount Animations / Nickelodeon Films. And so I guess someone discovers this and it starts to light a fire on Reddit. Everyone's freaking out oh, it's happening, everyone, it's happening. And apparently this became a big thing, and I don't know if he preemptively changed it or if they were you
bastard
freak, what have you done? He changed it. So if you go to his profile now, I took this screenshot. It now lists it as screenwriter for a Paramount Animation sequel. And it says that he started work on it in December of 2023.
Hold on a second. When was my video made?
What was that?
2020. Damn, I'm still off.
I was gonna say in that video you talk about, you're like, it's gonna happen in 1 year. We'll get into that. So clearly the cat's out of the bag. Something was being done with this. articles that mention it, they caution, they're like, things can change. And I mean, if you look at the topic that we just discussed on the last episode, things change, the things get canceled or moved around. There's not really any clear. The only thing we have to go off of is this man's LinkedIn profile. I thought it was interesting to kind of look at because this man had nothing to do with Jimmy Neutron, based on what I could tell. Like if you look at let's look at what he's known for. Hold on.
A lot of his work is from years ago that is still untitled.
So like,
stuff that hasn't released.
I know it looked like he comments that he got his start on a show called Clone High, which I've heard of before. So all he's really done is like episodes of Cartoon Network. He apparently was involved in the Lego movie. He did some rewrites for the Lego movie and also wrote like a short that they use at Legoland probably. But it's like a 4D thing. And then he wrote a movie called The Box Trolls, which I vaguely remember when this came out. And that one got like okay ratings. But so basically it's like, first of all, why are they doing this? Second of all, why did they choose him? Is my question, I guess. I mean, obviously there was fan outcry for this to bring this back, but why did they choose this man? I don't know. I guess you should kind of maybe get into.
Yeah, I'll get into some of my history of it. Back in 2020, sorry, I was away from my microphone. So back in 2020, I had a bit of a reinvigorated interest in Jim Neutron and trying to see what could happen, because this was just off the heels of Hey Arnold and off the heels of Rugrats, kind of moving forward with their stuff. So I made a big video about it, chatting about a bunch of information, because I was kind of still wanting to do, this was, after I had kind of quit doing a lot of the news videos. So I was trying to work out what was big stuff that I could do that would be engaging and was kind of a bit more uplifting.
That you totally
Not that
stole
slap
from me. I can't believe you stole that from me. It's crazy.
Stole what?
Nothing.
Slop?
You'll understand.
Explain
when you're
yourself.
older. You'll understand.
Explain yourself.
When you're older.
All right.
You'll understand when you're older. Never.
So I made a video about Jimmy Neutron, and it got 180 comments. It was like 30,000 views. It did really well. But what was interesting about it is it's probably the video that's had the most conversation around it. So lots
Which
of talking
video
with
was
different people. This is Jimmy Neutron Revival finally happening?
Okay, yeah, that was the one I was in the middle of.
Yep, January 2020. So this had comments from Mark DiCarlo in it. So he's the voice actor of Hugh Neutron. And then I got in contact with the person who's behind most of this stuff for Jimmy Neutron, which was Revive Jimmy Neutron and the Jimmy Neutron Revival Project. And they kind of reached out to me to let me know that, because they follow these people privately, that Mark DiCarlo had retweeted it. So had Debbie Derryberry, the voice of Jimmy Neutron, and Keith Alcorn, the creator of Jimmy Neutron, had shared it on his personal Facebook. So they had some a throughput there. So I was able to get some information, because Keith Alcorn had posted on their personal social media that he had been to Nickelodeon to do a pitch type of thing, but none of that was public, so I had to go through this person to find information on that.
Sorry, yeah, okay. No, I was listening, but I just read this comment where they're like, someone says, just imagine Jacob Tremblay as Jimmy Neutron, Brody Rose as Carl Weezer, McKenna Grace as Cindy Vortex, Millie Davis as Libby Fulfax, Jack Dylan Grazer as Sheen Estevez, and you just respond, I have no idea who any of those people are. To be fair, the only name I recognize out of any of those is McKenna Grace, but that's because in recent years she's gotten way more famous. She's done a lot more stuff, so.
Right. Anyway, other than my my fights with people, but yeah, so
a lot of comments on this video.
Yeah, it was a good time, and I did a few other videos on it, and they did well as well. But yeah, so yeah, I just want to say that that's a big thing that's been kind of on my mind as all the discussion has been happening. I am interested to see how this goes, because Nickelodeon is not the company that it was. The Rise is not the people that it was. And when you tell me that the guy behind Box Trolls,
that's kind of what's been on my mind as well,
has anything to do with this, I just think so. It's going to be a very solid 6 out of 10 experience. I hope it's not. I wouldn't be against a movie. I would prefer a season.
It sounds like it's going to be a movie based on what everything is saying. It's described as a movie.
But a movie could kick along to a show, depending on how they handle it.
If it does well, but we all know Paramount, who knows?
But also, the cinema world at the moment is very, very all over the place. So it's not a great era. I wouldn't want it to release now.
Well, that's also my theory. I don't even know that it releases in theaters. I kind of think
straight to
it's-
streaming?
I think it's a streaming movie because that's what they've been doing. Like, I don't remember the last time I saw a Nickelodeon movie in theaters.
Yeah. And if they're in talks with Paramount, I'm interested because they do have a deal at the moment with Netflix. And I believe there were some rumblings back in the day, maybe about 2017 or something, about Netflix potentially buying the rights for Jimmy Neutron, like the releasing rights, and them doing a series through of Jimmy Neutron, because there was a lot of conversation early on with Netflix. And I believe there was some meeting that Debbie Derryberry, the voice of Jimmy Neutron, went to at Netflix, and that's what caused all the discussion. Is her and the voice actor of Carl had been at a meeting at Netflix, and that also began a whole other debate because the voice actor for Sheen has been left out of a lot of this type of stuff, and so people think he's been kind of blacklisted by Nickelodeon, so he might not be included in whatever remake happens, which would be a real shame. But he's been quite outspoken about Nickelodeon not answering back calls and being quite distant with him since the failure of Planet Sheen.
He was blacklisted. I know the guy who plays Carl well, not personally. He's in everything. His son used to be a member of Game Explain, and now he has his own channel, Good Vibes Gaming.
There was also a Nickelodeon podcast at one stage that had the two of them on it, and they were talking very openly about wanting to do a revival series and all that, and it was weird. They mentioned the voice actress for Cindy and Libby and all that, but then they never mentioned Sheen, and so I was always a bit worried about that.
I could foresee them recasting him. I couldn't imagine they would do it and just not include the character, and just say,
they would do something.
He's off on Planet Sheen. He's not here. I read a lot of stuff from just quotes of the actors. The actors want it to happen, clearly.
Very much so.
I know. I can't think of his name. The voice of Carl, he had throat cancer at one point. I remember that.
He's made a full recovery, though. He's doing quite well.
I thought that was the case, but I wasn't sure. What would you want this to be, I guess?
I would desperately want... Also, I'm just reading the other document that you had for the possible sequel that was planned to release in 2004. Why didn't it?
I don't know.
It was nominated for an Oscar movie. I understand doing the TV show was probably their next focus, but like Nickelodeon makes the weirdest choices in my mind. So they're saying a sequel. They're not saying a reboot, which is fantastic. I want this to be a continuation on. My dream would be it starts with them like rescuing Sheen from the whole Planet Sheen stuff.
That would be good.
You make it, you can, like, you include it all. I hate reboots that ignore stuff. That's what was so successful about the Hey Arnold movie. I'd want that. I need John A. Davis and Keith Alcorn to be involved. I want some of those original writers. I want 90s writers, predominantly. I want some comedians on the board. And I want the full cast. I want the full cast. I don't want the Rugrats thing where they change the parents' voice actors as well. I want the full cast for everyone. That's the big things to me.
That's the pipe dream, I guess. I have a hard time believing any of that will happen based on what we know, but also I'm losing it. I had a thought. It was in there.
I think we'll at least see John A. Davis. I think we'll have him because he's been the most proactive in all the revival stuff. I think we'll see him. I 100% think we'll have Jimmy Neutron's voice actress. I'm 100% sure we'll have Carl's, and I'm 100% sure we'll have Cindy Vortex's. Other than that, I think it's all up in the air. Mark DiCarlo possibly is Hugh because he's such a meme figure as well.
Right. My main question, I guess, when I heard about this is like, what is it going to look like? And then you showed me the car commercial, and now I'm like, would it look like that, or would they redesign? Because that's also a fear, is like, do they redesign the characters and ruin it for everyone?
I think it will look a lot like the new SpongeBob movies. It'll be very shiny, very bright. I think it will be very... I think they'll stay mostly true to character design. They might change some clothing stuff, but they'll be so much more expressive. Like what we've seen with that new Shrek trailer, where it's like, they're so much more expressive that they've lost some of that original look. I think that will be the big thing. Because, their eyes will... Yeah, like their eyes will be different shapes because they're always squinting and frowning and all this type of stuff. So that will look really different. Their mouths will look different because they're so much more expressive and open and wide and and showing so many more like of that. Because the rigging will be so much more advanced.
Right. I keep thinking about Teen Titans Go. It's not a fair
No one's
comparison,
about
but
Crashout.
like the way
No one?
people reacted when they redesigned all those characters. And
I fully expect that it will be, announced, people will be super excited, and then we'll get the first trailer and it will be divided in half. And people will really dislike it or really like the art style, and that will carry on through most of it, and it will be impeded financially because of that. Because people want a reboot, people want more, but realistically they just want season 4 exactly as it was. They don't
Who did
want
that
something more.
2D animated version a while back. There was like a 2D animated Jimmy Neutron thing that someone made. Do you know?
Where they reanimated it?
I guess
the fan project.
Was it a fan project? Let's see. Jimmy Neutron remake Eric Brown. I don't. That's what comes up when I look it up. I don't know. I saw that earlier and thought the designs of those characters look really cool.
I saw that and I thought that looked cool, but at this stage, cost-wise, CG would be cheaper than that.
Right. I mean, that's why they do all the SpongeBob movies in CG now, I would say.
Yeah. So I think that's been my biggest argument for it these past 5 years is Jimmy Neutron was designed to be that and to be a cheaply animated thing. So
I think a lot about what it would look like, what the plot would be, but as someone, like, I'm interested, but as someone that didn't watch it, it's hard for me to say like, my opinion, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it will be tricky, but I think they can nail it. I think they can do a good job of it. I think it will always come with the weaknesses that these shows always do, which is people watch it and it is slightly different just because it is new content.
When
like all the original team could jump on board and people would still complain that it felt different because it is different and it is new.
It's also kind of that thing where everyone's like, I think Jacksepticeye said this, where he was like, you don't miss, like, Jacksepticeye was better when I was a kid. It's not that I was better when you were a kid, it's that you preferred the way you felt when you were a kid watching Jacksepticeye. So it's like, it's never going to bring back those feelings that people have of nostalgia and everything, because it's not going to be the same thing, first of all. And it's never going to be as good. Just like everyone says, SpongeBob is not as good as it was, and
it's never going to be as good as if you go in with the mindset of it needing to be that. And that's the issue with a remake or a reboot or a sequel, is they say that's the company saying, we are going to give you that experience again. Mm-hmm. That is the inherent flaw of that world.
When do we think it happens? So if it's been worked on since 2023.
Year and a half, it said, yeah. I think we will... If it is true, I think we will be getting I think we will get an announcement and a trailer this
year. And then
year.
The whole movie leaks, and everyone sees it behind the scenes. And then it'll come out another year.
Yeah, I think it will be releasing towards the end of next year. And I think they're going to be gunning for that. If it is Keith Alcorn and those guys, I think they're going to be gunning for another Oscar nomination. So they're going to be going slightly earlier in the year, like not towards the very end, so that they can still be in time for the actual like animation award stuff. So I'm thinking October, September, 2026.
Do people care about the Oscars anymore?
No, but I think if you got that close to getting an Oscar,
how close? Like, what was it? Just nominated for best animated?
They lost to Shrek. It was them and Shrek.
Ooh, yeah, that hurts.
So they're going up against Shrek again.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Damn.
Zendaya versus Jimmy Neutron. There you go.
But no, I think I am dubious because I have gone through this about 6 times in the past.
That's kind of what
10
I was
years.
Is like, it seems like you had a long history with hoping that this is going to happen, and then all of a sudden you were Googling something and were like, oh, what now?
I've been caring about this and making videos about this for 5 years. and I missed it by 2 months. This is the issue when you get to an age like mine where I'm just like, you know what, social media is terrible for me and I don't need it. And I delete it all off my phone. So I just miss things now.
Well, honestly, social media at this point, you're gonna miss things. It's just a cluster.
Listen, everyone comments on my old videos being like, this didn't age well. None of them commented to say, hey, this aged good.
I watched Recess, no stress, and then the kids next door always playing, messing with each other in the back tree house, chilling and possibly fighting evil, jerking off to Kim and having fun again with my cartoon friends. No classmates anyway, to hell with them. 'Cause
what is the comfiest place on the Nintendo 64? I think many of us over the years have spent time just hanging out in a favorite location in a favorite game for hours on end. After all, the N64 and PS1 era was the sort of first opportunity humans had at really diving into an immersive three-dimensional environment which felt real, or at least felt like we could escape to a new place. I'm sure many of us growing up might have had a cramped room or a chaotic household, and sometimes you just wanted to chill in a comfy spot. So what comes to mind for you? Today I'll be exploring some of my favorite comfy locations on the Nintendo 64, and hopefully giving you something to reminisce about, and certainly my first location I believe is one very few people have ever explored. So let's get into it and see if some of my favorite spots are yours as well.
Here we go.
So here we are in the game Pilot Wings 64, a truly remarkable and wonderful game. One of the launch games for the N64 alongside Super Mario 64, although frankly it just does not get the respect that I think it deserves or the lasting legacy, because it really is a wonderful game. Now, of course, in this game, you have to carry out certain objectives and go on what are called like pilot training courses to get medals and your license and all that. But for the purpose of this exploration and this comfy spot, you know, imagine like you're playing GoldenEye or Mario Kart, you have to kind of abandon the purpose of your mission or race and just kind of explore the course. So we're in a course called Crescent Island. Now this game has 4 courses and they all have some comfy spots. If you have played this game, which is probably, you know, a reach at this point, even though it's sold like 1 million copies, it feels like it's a pretty forgotten game. But if you have played this game, you might be familiar with this area of the Crescent Island map. It's sort of the kind of main harbor of the course, and there's one famous mission where you have to snap a picture of this beautiful whale out here, this wonderful, cute whale. Is it a blue whale or a black whale? Whatever the case may be. And you also have to snap a picture of a fountain in front of this hotel up here. And there's a lot going on this side of the island. And it was kind of built that way because, you know, it's heavily and prominently featured in one of the more well-known missions in the game. You can see kind of a huge resort, a huge fountain, some sailboats. You know, it's all really quite wonderful. And even these hotels and resorts have like swimming pools. And if you fall into those swimming pools down below, you know, you pass away. In the mission, you have to restart. The game also has numerous like parking lots out front of older buildings, which is pretty cool. And, you know, look, here's some tennis courts. Maybe nowadays they'd be replaced with pickleball courts, a game growing in popularity. But this sort of main central area of Crescent Island is not actually the comfy spot that I want to show you. For that, we have to go on the other side of the island. And it's one of those things where, you know, just like in GoldenEye is a great example, where the developers built these huge maps as their first priority, exploring these 3D worlds, before sort of assigning objectives and meaning to these maps. But if we go on this side of the map, we get to all sorts of these other small outbuildings and huts, you know, just like this. Like what's going on here, we have kind of a 2-story, maybe a longhouse or a large boarding house or something, and a couple of outbuildings, a couple silos and a garage. And like, okay, that's pretty cool. That's why is it there? It's certainly not part of any objective on any mission on this course, Crescent Island. I mean, look over here. There's even like so finely detailed little steps to get up to this building, if one so pleased. And if we carry on, we'll get to even more ornate and decorated buildings, which I just find so pleasing and really comfy to hang out in. We're coming up on one now, and it's really remarkable. It is none other than sort of a small, like, tiki village. And, has these huts, has a fire sort of roaring here, clearly a little bonfire. And, it sort of just really juxtaposes with the developed, hotel resort area on the other side of the island. It's sort of like, is this where the locals maybe live? You can imagine an island deep in, say, the South Pacific, a wonderful sort of paradise. And, here's this little settlement that the locals live in. And, what are they up to? Burning some brush, keeping their little property area tidy. You have little huts for the people, maybe a couple bigger huts for the elders or chieftains, or whatever the case may be. And this is just a wonderful little location to fly around, no doubt. And, this spot here, it is a landing spot for another one of the game's missions, but it's like you're not prominently passing through this little tiki village and stopping to note it. It's something you really have to go out of your way to explore and find. And we'll show one more very comfy location here. We can see my fuel gauge is indeed running low. But on the other side of the island from the main resort, and again, this has no objective purpose in the game, it was just built by the developers for fun. Nintendo and Paradigm simulation. And we see this wonderful sort of secondary resort area, or maybe a local area. And there's this beautiful ocean break wall here, as the first thing, with even steps coming up from the ocean, and a sailboat kind of to create some safe harbor. And look, we have another beautiful fountain. We have some sort of building. Could this be a town hall? And if we check out this top part, it looks sort of like a clock up there. And there's lots of houses. You can imagine the sorts of residents who might be here, especially if you were playing this game for the first time in 1996. A couple of small, modest bungalows, a couple of larger buildings that might be, communal or commercial spaces. And, we can even see the smoke emanating from the chimney here, which is just so wonderful and so comfy. Even this building looks like it has that clock texture on the top peak here. And if we go over towards this church, you'll get a bell ringing noise. Just really, there's no sort of NPC characters, no Sims or anything like that. And yet, they've managed to make this feel pretty alive with the motion of the ocean and the sailboat and the chimney smoke. And I just love this spot because it really is off the trodden path. I mean, if anyone who's watching this has ever hung out here, please comment, because I have a feeling it'll be very few and far between. Pilot Wing's just so unappreciated, and we're in sort of a remote or lesser traveled part of an island. I'm gonna run out of fuel here, let myself fall to the ground. And who would have come here to take this all in and still be around to remember it today? But I just love to introduce that to you all. And there's the beautiful spot here on Crescent Island. My next choice for a comfy location is here in none other than the Carrington Institute in Perfect Dark. And I would say the entirety of the whole of the building, sort of this kind of hub world where you can, check in and choose to go into missions or explore a number of other things and interact with other characters. It's really sort of supposed to be this high modern design. We got lovely paintings on the wall. it's sort of like an office building for you as a young spy, Joanna Dark. But, you know, there's all these little rooms and people we can talk to.
Hello, Joanna.
There's Mr. Carrington, and, you know, just an endless amount of places to run around and to sort of just kind of find peace and relaxation. You know, you're kind of the top dog, spy, or agent in this world. You know, there's lots of little monitors. We can read about various characters involved in the story. We can check out all the cheats that we've unlocked. And there's even more monitors downstairs that we can check out. Now, one thing, and certainly I would say it's a kind of funny thing to observe, you know, I don't want to get too thick into the weeds of observing the, you know, liminal art that passes through Perfect Dark. Maybe that'll be a great video for Ace and I to explore one day. But one thing that I find kind of funny in Carrington Institute is that there are no stairs to get downstairs from the upper balcony. And that might be because, you know, the developers wanted you to get used to calling lifts in the game, which is sort of a big departure from GoldenEye, its spiritual processor. And, you know, so this is certainly probably not OSHA approved. There's no, you know, staircases or anything. I mean, this corner is pretty sick. What a liminal space that corner is right there. But just this whole building gives you that very grand and accomplished feeling of kind of having a very comfy and cool workplace, because that's what this is. You know, anytime you can pause and go into a mission where there's enemies coming from you, and it's much more intense. But just roaming around the Carrington Institute, you're kind of at peace and everything is safe and dandy. You know, we have the hologram room where we can perform various battles, simulations. We also have the shooting range. Of course, what great gamer wouldn't love a shooting range? I mean, this is like a very, very cool thing to have in the game. And you go in here and, you know, you just do a quick little shooting demonstration, some target shooting. You know, nothing like that Olympic target shooting. A lot of people forget that it's actually an Olympic sport. Look at that, bronze. I took 4.20 seconds just by chance. Isn't that quite remarkable? We got the bronze medal there. Pretty cool. But there's even one of my favorite sort of interactable areas is downstairs. And, you know, here's the cool CI for Carrington Institute logo. And even the reflections are just so impressive here. This door is locked, unfortunately. And that's the thing, is it becomes shocking later when this area is the stage for a mission in-game. You know, the Defense Carrington Institute, where the Skedars invade and you have to protect and save your coworkers. You know, the hostages, they become hostages, unfortunately. And, you know, it really is quite jarring that this area of peace becomes sort of the setting for a very challenging moment, at least in the game's plot. Kind of reminds me actually of Diddy Kong Racing, and we might get into that a little bit later, and the kind of the hub world there, where it's a very peaceful thing, and then it becomes a setting for a race, although that one is certainly more pleasant. I mean, look at this kind of just the brutalist architecture of the area. You know, that's quite fascinating, quite enchanting to see and appreciate and take in. You know, I've never looked at this frame, I think, and it kind of gives me that feeling with no ceiling of the sky. And the sky is void, just completely blue. No sun here, although there is sun in Perfect Dark. And there you go. Now the one more room I want to get to is a little bit over here. In this hangar, you know, this is a cool hangar. It's the ending of the mission version of the Carrington Institute. But this guy's computer has a lot of interesting data, especially with the locations of the missions in game. Now, I haven't completed the file here, so I don't have them all, but, you know, Lucerne Tower is the global headquarters of the Theday Corporation, your sort of antithesis or antagonist corporation compared to the Carrington Institute. And the game is just so prescient in terms of predicting these sorts of battles and artificial intelligence arms race and these sorts of things. One mission that I love is the crash site mission, and canonically in the game, you are leaving with you're sneaking onto Air Force One in Alaska, in an Alaskan airbase, and unfortunately the aliens crash it and it lands here. And it says Victoria Island, which is an island in Canada, actually, way up in the Arctic archipelago. If you look up those coordinates on screen, 71 north, 118 west. Even so, it's a very desolate location, no settlements for dozens, if not hundreds of kilometers around, and it would be quite a place for such a crash and such an event. It'd be very cold, as you see in the mission. And it's just kind of cool to take a reprieve from the game and run around and stroll around freely. Not quite sandbox feel because we don't have weapons out here. We can't mess around too much. But it's certainly a departure from GoldenEye, where there's really nothing like this. You can kind of queue into multiplayer and scroll around and run around, but it's not quite the same as really having this whole overworld or hub world to explore. And the graphics on Perfect Dark, I see this come up a lot when people discussing games. Like, Perfect Dark probably is the pinnacle of the N64 in terms of graphics and development and gameplay and all that kind of stuff. And there's so many options. The game is really, really deep, beyond deep. Before the new Perfect Dark comes out, I do want to do a sort of a plot explained video, because the plot's crazy. And it's just such a cool place, and that's why I definitely want to include it and talk about it in this list of comfy places to hang out on the N64. So let's start with just an absolute classic. Just the whole overworld of Diddy Kong Racing. One of the things that makes it really stand out from, say, Mario Kart 64 is that you just have this truly magical and majestic overworld. These rushing waterfalls, these frogs hopping around, and they're just so comfy to see. I feel like the frogs and Taj hanging out here, plus the waterfalls moving, give it sort of a vibe of it not being super empty. A lot of these N64 spaces, early 3D spaces, can sort of feel too empty at times. But this shot is just magical. This is just so fun and wonderful and peaceful. You feel like nothing is going to harm you. Life is good, when you're hanging out.
Yeah, that's
in
one
the
of my
wonderful
favorite
overworld
digital
of Diddy Kong
spaces.
Racing, especially under the waterfalls. I think I might have unlocked the drumstick there. I'll have to go back in the menu and see. I beat this file a long time ago, but on my EverDrive, but I had never unlocked the good old drumstick. And the way that these waterfalls also, some of them open up, and you can drive right through and continue to sort of find a little hidden shortcut. Of course, you're not really racing here, and so it's not a true shortcut in any conventional sense, except when you race Taj, of course. But still just feels like there's so much to explore. I mean, it almost feels like this map of the overworld is as big and detailed as maps of other racing games entirely, And so for the guys at Rare were really cooking in this era. There's just simply no doubt about that. They were mega cooking. They were trying to do things in games that no one had ever done before. The whole stop and swap thing is something I have to get into another time, but they were doing some crazy stuff. But I feel like this area is very underappreciated as well. We're in the Dragon Forest, subworld or lobby or whatever. We can enter these various maps. We can bump into TT. And it's just such a comfy little village here, You get sort of that entrance and exit, which is sort of a big castle door. And we get these, 5 houses, ostensibly, which are the 4 maps of the level, plus the trophy display, which opens up into actually a courtyard. But this kind of structuring, it's almost this, I guess you would call it Tudor style, in a way. very sort of old English folklore, fairy tale kind of design. And it's certainly a comfy place to hang out. We can go down this tree and check out the mini game, which is a cool thing unto itself. I remember finding the key in Boulder Canyon was such a cool thing when I figured that out with no game FAQs or whatever. But yeah, just a lovely area, and honestly, pretty much the entirety of Diddy Kong Racing is one of the more comfy, just more surreal and lovely and safe feeling places on the entire Nintendo 64 by far. I mean, who doesn't love just this vista? Is just one of a kind. It's just sit here and enjoy the sounds of the waterfalls all day, maybe even fall asleep to it.
Alright, I think we're gonna call it a day for the stream right now. Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, it should be done soonish, which I'm excited. At least with the structural stuff. So then I could start patching and it will be just some time of waiting. But yeah, I'm excited. I think we're gonna finish in time perfectly. And honestly, I might keep those. I might use it in my room. And just update it to have like connection to the top. That would be so sick. Wonder if there's anything you can like code it to be fireproof or like at least more resistant. Also, I'm kind of addicted to do this now. I want to make so many different structures now. I'm gonna end up just collecting a shit ton of cardboard. Alright, yeah, I should get something to eat so then I can keep going. Thank you all for being here. I shall see you next time.